Chapter 508. Shui Lingzi sneered. I try to hold it in so as not to hurt everyone's relationship. But what about you guys? Do I have to say it out loud? Li Ming Shan said angrily. You were the one who said the conditions. We didn't ask you to say it. After hearing Li Ming Shan's words, Water's spirit nodded. Since I said it, then I'll say it again. Your conditions are too high, so you need to lower them a bit before we can negotiate. Shui Lingzi paused for a bit before continuing. If you don't lower your conditions, then I have nothing to say. At worst, I'll go back and say that I can't complete this mission. It's not like I'll suffer any harm. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Shadowless suddenly sneered and said, Shui Lingzi, your words are really nice to hear. If you can't complete this mission, will it really harm you? Shui Lingzi turned to look at Shadowless and sneered. Shadowless, then tell me, what harm will it do to me if I can't complete this mission? Shadowless snorted and turned to Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi, don't treat us like idiots. We know about the competition between the Tiangongmen and Kikyamen. Why do you want to take away Kikyamen's people? Do you think we don't know? Shadowless paused for a bit before continuing. Shui Lingzi, Kikyamen is very important to you Tiangongmen. Even if you don't say it, do you think we don't know? I can guarantee that if you can't bring back Kikyamen's people, you will be heavily punished. Shui Lingzi's expression changed but quickly returned to normal. Shadowless, the Tiangongmen and Kikyamen did have a competition, but it was a draw. Our sect leader went missing at this time, so we want to bring back Kikyamen's people. Shadowless sneered and shook his head. Shui Lingzi, let's not beat around the bush. As long as you satisfy us, we'll satisfy you too. Shadowless snorted again. Shui Lingzi, if you don't satisfy us, then we don't need to satisfy you either. Shui Lingzi raged. You're hitting us when we're down. Did we Tiangongmen offend you? Shadowless shook his head. No, you Tiangongmen didn't offend us, but we didn't offend you Tiangongmen either. We spent a lot of money to get your equipment, so we don't owe each other anything. Shui Lingzi raged. Since you know this, why are you being so aggressive? Can't you give us Tiangongmen some face? Shadowless sneered. Since we bought our equipment with money, why should we give you face? Hearing Shadowless's words, Shui Lingzi was stunned. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Every piece of Tiangongmen's equipment was sold to the outside world. Using these equipment to exchange for a large amount of wealth was the only way to support the operations of the Tiangongmen. In other words, no matter who got the equipment from the Tiangongmen, they spent money or used materials to exchange for it. There really wasn't a question of giving face. Seeing that Shui Lingzi didn't answer, Shadowless suddenly sighed. Let's not talk about those things anymore, it's meaningless. Let's talk about our situation first. At this point, Shadowless paused for a moment before continuing. I'll say the same thing again. 2 pieces of level 20 equipment. As long as you agree to it, I'll withdraw immediately and no longer interfere with the matters of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. This time, Shadowless was careful and didn't say 2 pieces of equipment for everyone, but 2 pieces of equipment for himself. As long as Shui Lingzi agreed to give him 2 pieces of level 20 equipment, Shadowless wouldn't care about anyone else. After hearing Shadowless's words, Shui Lingzi nodded and turned to Wu Kadi. Wu Kadi, what about you? What's your condition? Wu Kadi heard this and said loudly, I don't want much of your equipment. As long as you give me the 2 pieces of level 20 equipment that we agreed on before, I'll be satisfied. Hearing Wu Kadi's answer, Shui Lingzi nodded again and looked at Li Shan Shan. Li Shan Shan, what about you? What's your condition? Li Shan sneered. My condition is the same as theirs, 2 pieces of level 20 equipment. After hearing the conditions of the 3 people, Shui Lingzi suddenly sighed. Your conditions are the same as before, level 20 equipment. But as I said before, 6 pieces of level 20 equipment. We Tiangongmen can't afford it. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Since none of you are willing to take the initiative to lower the price and reach this agreement, then I'll state my condition. 1 piece of level 20 equipment for everyone. If you agree, then our agreement will take effect immediately. Just as Shui Lingzi finished speaking, Wu Kadi shouted, Shui Lingzi, you're too cunning, but I definitely won't fall for your trick. I can tell you clearly that if you want to get rid of my Wu clan with one piece of level 20 equipment, you're dreaming. Hearing Wu Kadi's roar, Shui Lingzi didn't get angry and continued to look at Li Shan. Li Shan, are you still not satisfied with one piece of level 20 equipment? Li Shan sneered. Why should I be satisfied? Originally, there were two pieces of level 20 equipment, but you only gave me one. If it was you, would you be satisfied? Shui Lingzi nodded and turned to Shadowless. Shadowless, one piece of level 20 equipment. Do you agree? Shadowless shook his head. If it's only one piece of level 20 equipment, then we really don't need to reach an agreement with you. After hearing the three's answer, Shui Lingzi pondered for a moment before slowly saying, one piece of level 20 equipment and two pieces of level 10 equipment. That's my bottom line. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. I can tell you clearly now that the level 10 equipment that I'm giving you is from me. Because if you pass the Tiangongmen, I'm afraid that you won't be able to pass this condition. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Wu Kadi was furious. He took a step forward and said loudly, I don't agree. You want to send my Wu clan away with two pieces of level 10 equipment? You should keep it for yourself. Seeing Wu Kadi so angry, Shui Lingzi sighed and turned to look at Shadowless. Shadowless, Wu Kadi is too stubborn. You can't be like him. Shadowless sneered. Shui Lingzi, you're right. You're just like Wu Kadi. Speaking up to here, Shadowless paused for a moment before continuing. Two pieces of level 20 equipment, not one less. Shui Lingzi shook her head and turned to look at Li Shan, but who knew that before she could say anything, Li Shan would speak first. Shui Lingzi, you don't need to ask me. I don't agree. Chapter 509. Li Shan sneered and said, Water Spirit, one level 20 equipment and two level 10 equipment. I won't agree to that. Hearing Li Shan's answer, Water Spirit sighed. Why are you all so stubborn? Do you think that the Tiangongmen's equipment can be bought by the wind and they don't need to be made? Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing. How about this one level 20 equipment and two level 15 equipment? This is my bottom line. If this matter still doesn't work, then I'll give up. Hearing Water Spirit's words, Wu Kadi didn't speak. He was thinking in his heart whether or not he should agree to this condition. This time, no matter how much equipment the Tiangongmen gave them, they wouldn't need to spend a single copper coin. One level 20 equipment and two level 15 equipment. Although it was a far cry from the previous two level 20 equipment, but the conditions were still quite good. What's more, if he didn't agree and Water Spirit withdrew, then he wouldn't be able to get anything. Thinking of this, Wu Kadi raised his head and looked around, wanting to see what other people were thinking. Wu Kadi just raised his head when he heard Li Shan's voice. Water Spirit, take back your equipment. I won't agree to this condition. Water Spirit heard this and sighed. Such a good condition. Why won't you agree? Li Shan sneered. One level 20 equipment and two level 15 equipment. Although it's not bad, compared to two level 20 equipment, it's still far from enough. That's why I won't agree to your conditions. Water Spirit looked at Li Shan and asked word by word. Even if I withdraw, you still won't agree? Li Shan froze for a moment, then sneered. Water Spirit, you don't need to lie to me. No matter what condition I give you, you won't withdraw. Water Spirit sneered. Li Shan, are you so sure that I won't withdraw no matter what condition you give me? Li Shan nodded decisively. No, you won't quit. Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. If you withdraw, I'm afraid you won't be able to reply when you go back. Water Spirit nodded. Indeed, if I can't complete this task, then it won't be good for me. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi's tone paused. Then he sighed and continued. It is because of this reason that I want to reach an agreement with you. Speaking up to here, Water Spirit's voice suddenly raised. But you, although I wanted to reach an agreement with you, you used this as an excuse to keep increasing the price. Now, I can't afford it, I'll withdraw. Now are you satisfied? Li Mingshan sneered. Water Spirit, do you think we're 3-year-old children? The great Heaven's Craftsman Gate doesn't even have 6 pieces of level 20 equipment? Do you think we'll believe you? Hearing this, Water Spirit shook her head. I already said that level 20 equipment isn't easy to create. Why would the Tiangongmen spend so much manpower and resources to create such equipment? At this point, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing. Do you know how many Tiangongmen there are? Do you know how many Tiangongmen are waiting for the equipment to be sold so that they can buy materials? Do you know how many Tiangongmen are waiting for the equipment to be sold so that they can buy materials? If I give you these 6 pieces of level 20 equipment, the Tiangongmen will definitely suffer great losses. What should I do then? After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan was stunned. As a big sect, although on the surface it looked incomparably glorious, but the expenses were also quite huge. Not to mention the Tiangongmen, even the Godly Knife faction was in the same situation. Without a huge source of funds, how could the Godly Knife faction operate? Thinking of this, Li Mingshan was speechless for a moment. Shadowless sneered and said, Water Spirit, who are you trying to fool? Level 20 equipment may be precious, but which one of you doesn't have one? If you take them out, you can give them to us. How can you say that the Heaven's Craftsman faction has suffered a great loss? Water Spirit shook her head. Not everyone has level 20 equipment. Even the disciples of the Tiangongmen are the same. Many people have never seen level 20 equipment in their entire life. That's why it's impossible. At this moment, Silver Knife, who was struggling to get up, suddenly shouted, Water Spirit, don't make it sound so pitiful. If you don't give me a piece of level 25 equipment today, I won't let you go. Hearing this voice, everyone remembered that Silver Knife was also there. Silver Knife suddenly took a few deep breaths and staggered towards Water Spirit. Water Spirit, I don't care about your Tiangongmen's business. How you take out the equipment is your business. But if you want to take away Kikiman's people, you have to have my permission first. Cough, cough, Silver Knife said anxiously, causing another round of violent coughing. After coughing, he felt a bit better, but then he felt a wave of nausea. He couldn't hold it in anymore and spat out a mouthful of blood. After spitting out the mouthful of blood, Silver Knife felt a lot better and continued to speak. Water Spirit, don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and find a way to get the equipment. Hearing this, everyone's heart was moved. The Tiangongmen's problems were their own business. What did it have to do with others? If they wanted to take away Kikiman's people today, then they would have to pay the price. After understanding this point, Li Mingshan suddenly laughed. After laughing, he turned his head to look at Water Spirit and said, Water Spirit Indao is right. The matter of equipment is your Heaven's Craftsman faction's business. It has nothing to do with us. You gave us the equipment because you want to take away Kikiman's people. We didn't ask you for it. You can also choose not to take away Kikiman's people. That way, you don't have to give us the equipment. Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing, Water Spirit, don't you think so? After hearing Li Shan's words, Water Spirit sighed again. She understood that this matter was troublesome. She was a bit moved by Li Shan's words, but she didn't expect Silver Knife to remind her. Li Shan quickly reacted. Thinking up to here, Water Spirit fiercely glared at Silver Knife and said softly, I admit that I gave you the equipment because I wanted to take away Kikiman's people, but your asking price is too high. Even if I wanted to give you the equipment, I don't have that much to give you. Li Shan shook his head. I don't care about this matter. I just want to take the reward for not taking care of this matter. Before Water Spirit could answer, Shadowless smiled and said, That's right, we just want to take the reward we deserve. Chapter 510. Water Spirit said angrily, You guys are being rude. If I could give it to you, why wouldn't I? You guys want so much level 20 equipment. How am I supposed to give it to you? Li Shan shook his head and sneered. That's your Tiangongmen's business. I don't care. Water Spirit sighed. I give up. I can't take out so much level 20 equipment, so I can only back out. Shadowless suddenly said, Water Spirit, are you really going to give up? Water Spirit nodded and said helplessly, I really can't take out so much equipment, so I can only give up. Hearing Water Spirit's answer, Shadowless nodded and said coldly, Water Spirit, you have to keep your word. Hearing Shadowless say this, Water Spirit felt strange, but still nodded, I will. Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing, I can't take out so much. As for level 20 equipment, I can only give up. Hearing Water Spirit's answer, Shadowless suddenly laughed. After laughing, he turned to look at Water Spirit and said with a smile, Water Spirit, if you give up, then fine. I'll take away Kikiaman's people. No. As soon as Shadowless' words fell, a wave of opposition came from all around. Wu Kadi stepped forward and said angrily, No, I won't agree. Shadowless turned to Wu Kadi and said slowly, Why? Wu Kadi, what do you mean? Wu Kadi sneered. If Water Spirit wants to take away Kikiaman's people, you have to pay the price of 6 level 20 equipment. Speaking up to here, Wu Kadi paused for a moment before continuing. Shadowless, what price do you want to pay? Shadowless shook his head. No price, I just want to take away Kikiaman's people. Hearing Shadowless's answer, Wu Kadi suddenly sneered. He turned his head to look at Li Shan and asked indifferently, Li Shan, Shadowless wants to take away the 7 skills sex people without paying any price. I wonder if your godly knife sect is willing to accept this? Hearing Wu Kadi's question, Li Shan shook his head expressionlessly. No matter who wants to take away Kikiaman's people, they have to pay the price. If you don't want to take away Kikiaman's people, then you have to ask if my knife agrees or not. Hearing Li Mingshan's answer, Wu Kadi turned to Shadowless and sneered. Shadowless, did you hear that? Did you ask Li Mingshan about that saber? Did his saber agree? Shadowless shook his head. I don't need to ask. If he doesn't agree, I'll give up too. Wu Kadi paused for a second and then sneered. If that's the case, then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. You want to take away Kikiaman's people without paying any price? Not only Li Mingshan's Dao won't agree, but I won't agree either. Hearing this, Shadowless sighed. It seems that the only people who can take away Qi Qiao sect are from the Heaven's Craftsman faction. Shui Lingzi shook her head. I gave up. The price to take Kikiaman is too high. We Tiangalman can't afford it, so we gave up too. After Shui Lingzi's words, the scene fell into silence. Everyone was looking at each other, hoping that the other would take a step back. After a while, Li Shan sighed. It seems like none of us can take away Kikiaman's people today. Shadowless turned to Li Shan and sneered. Li Shan, do you want to take away Kikiaman's people as well? Li Shan nodded. I do, but I can't afford such a high price, so I can't take away Kikiaman's people either. Shadowless sighed. He looked at the sky and said softly, It's almost dawn. Shadowless paused for a second before continuing. After dawn, Kikiaman's people will leave this place. Everyone heard Shadowless's words, but no one answered him. They were all silently thinking about how to solve this problem. The scene fell into silence once again. This time, no one spoke again. Time passed by slowly, and the sky finally brightened. To be more precise, it was dawn. The fog of the night was just about to disperse, and there was a sliver of light on the horizon. At this time, Sun Shower was overjoyed when no one spoke. Seeing that the sun was about to rise, she quickly ordered people to prepare everything and leave. Fire Spirit, who was standing not far from Kikiaman, became impatient when he saw that Sun Shower and the others were about to leave. He turned to Shui Lingzi and asked in a low voice, Are we going to let Kikiaman's people leave just like that? Shui Lingzi bitterly smiled and shook her head. If we don't let them go, what else can we do? Fire Spirit hurriedly said. But if we let them go, how are we going to explain this? Shui Lingzi sighed. Even if we want to stop them, do you have 6 level 20 equipment? Hearing this, Fire Spirit looked at everyone angrily. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. If it wasn't for these despicable people, this mission would have been completed long ago. The Kikiaman's horses were already on the carriage, and the people were packed. They were just waiting for Sun Shower's order to leave. Even now, no one spoke. They were all waiting for someone to stop Sun Shower. Of these people, the happiest was of course Sun Shower. The entire night was spent in discussions with everyone. Although everyone was resting here, no one rested well. They spent the night in a state of tension. Sun Xiaoer was already regretting it. She should have ordered people to hurry and not waste time here. Zhang Ming also stood up and prepared to leave. Although he knew that these people in front of him would definitely not let them go easily, since no one said anything, it was best to leave. Just as Sun Xiaoer was about to give the order, Fire Spirit couldn't hold it in anymore. He suddenly jumped to the front of Sun Xiaoer's group and shouted, "Don't leave. Our matter hasn't been resolved yet. You can't leave now." Sun Xiaoer saw this and quickly walked to the front of the group. She angrily said to Fire Spirit, "Fire Spirit, I already told you that Han Xinyun's matter has nothing to do with us. I hope you won't stop us." Fire Spirit anxiously stopped the group, but he didn't know what to say. He could only turn to Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi saw this and secretly sighed. He originally didn't want to speak up. Even if Kikiaman's people left, he didn't want to speak up, because if he spoke up, the others would immediately surround him and ask for benefits. However, Fire Spirit had already stopped Kikiaman's group. Even if he didn't want to speak, he had to. Shui Lingzi slowly walked to the front of the group and looked at Sun Xiaoer. He smiled and said, "Our sect Master Han's matter and the competition's matter haven't been resolved." Chapter 511. Shui Lingzi continued, "Sect Leader Sun, I want you to leave after we've finished our business." Sun Xiaoer quickly shook her head. "I've already made it clear to you. Why are you still bothering me?" Shui Lingzi sneered. "As long as Sect Leader Han hasn't been found, our business isn't over. As long as there's no winner, our competition has to continue. How can this be considered over?" At this time, Shadowless also slowly walked over. "Shui Lingzi is right. Your business isn't over yet. You should finish your business here before you leave." After hearing the two's words, Sun Xiaoer took a deep breath and slowly said, "Shui Lingzi, what do you want?" Shui Lingzi shook her head. "I don't want anything. I just want Sect Leader Sun and your people to come back with me to the Tiangongmen to help with the investigation of Sect Leader Han and also to finish our competition. At that time, if Sect Leader Sun wants to leave, I won't stop you." Sun Xiaoer looked at Shui Lingzi and asked word by word, "What if I don't agree?" Hearing Sun Xiaoer's words, Fire Spirit suddenly shouted, "Sun Xiaoer, this isn't something you can do. If you don't come back with us, we'll take you back even if we have to use force." Sun Xiaoer stared at Shui Lingzi. "Shui Lingzi, is this what you want?" Shui Lingzi sighed. "Our mission this time is to take you back. If you don't agree, we'll have to use force to complete our mission." Sun Xiaoer nodded. "Good, the Tiangongmen are really strong. Using force to deal with a small sect, they're really strong." Hearing Sun Xiaoer's words, Shui Lingzi's face turned red, but she still said, "We have a mission. Please forgive us, Sect Leader Sun." Sun Xiaoer suddenly turned to Shadowless and sneered, "Shadowless, Shui Lingzi wants to take away Kikiaman's people. Are you going to agree?" Shadowless laughed and nodded. "Why wouldn't we agree? As long as the Tiangongmen give us enough benefits, why wouldn't we agree?" Hearing Shadowless's words, Sun Xiaoer sneered. "Water Spirit, I think you should solve your own problem before taking us away." Hearing this, Shui Lingzi's expression changed, and the feeling of depression that had disappeared surged into her heart once again. He knew what Shadowless was trying to say. It was still about the 2 level 20 equipment. If he gave Shadowless the 2 level 20 equipment, he would definitely let him take away Kikiaman's men. However, if he didn't give him the 2 level 20 equipment, he would definitely stop him from taking away Kikiaman's men. Shui Lingzi turned her head and saw Wu Kadi, Li Mingshan, and the others surrounding her. She couldn't help but sigh. Shui Lingzi was just about to turn around when her eyes suddenly narrowed, and she couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. Surprisingly, there was even Silver Saber among the crowd. Silver Saber was heavily injured. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be able to stand up and walk over. However, even if he couldn't walk, he could still crawl. Silver Saber was just like that. He clenched his teeth and crawled over. Shui Lingzi looked at Silver Saber crawling over and then looked at Shadowless and the others. She suddenly gritted her teeth and said, "Fine, I agree. I'll give each of you 2 level 20 equipment." Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Shadowless's face suddenly showed a trace of a smile. He suddenly clapped his hands and said, "Good. You're really straightforward. 6 level 20 equipment, and you're willing to take it out just like that. The Tiangongmen really are rich. No one can compare to you. Haha." Hearing Shadowless's laughter, Shui Lingzi felt that it was a bit harsh, and her heart was extremely uncomfortable. If it wasn't for the Tiangongmen, Shui Lingzi would have said something about fighting to the death with him to vent her anger. At this time, Wu Kedi also came in front of everyone and said with a smile, "Shui Lingzi, if you were this straightforward earlier, we wouldn't have had to do this just now." After hearing Wu Kedi's words, Li Shan wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. Li Shan didn't say anything, but someone else spoke for him. Silver Saber, who was crawling over, barely supporting his body as he angrily shouted, "Shui Lingzi, you're dreaming. If you don't give me that level 25 equipment, I won't let you take away Kikyaman's people." After saying that, Silver Saber took a few deep breaths and crawled towards Sun Xiaoer. Seeing such a tenacious Silver Saber, Shui Lingzi didn't know what to say. He was already heavily injured, but he was still able to crawl over. This was really amazing. While Shui Lingzi was in a daze, Silver Saber had already crawled in front of Sun Xiaoer and her. Gritting his teeth and dripping cold sweat, Silver Saber actually slowly stood up. Although his body was still shaking, he really did stand up. Silver Saber wiped the blood from his mouth and violently coughed for a while before saying with a trembling voice, "Shui Lingzi, if you have the ability, then kill me. If you don't, then hurry up and take out the equipment." As soon as Silver Saber's voice fell, Fire Spirit suddenly came to Shui Lingzi's side. Saber, I didn't think you would still be alive. Do you want Grandpa to send you on your way?" Silver Saber coldly laughed. "Fire Spirit, don't talk big. If you have the ability, then send me on my way. If you don't, then don't even think about it." After hearing Silver Saber's words, Fire Spirit was furious. He clenched his fist and was about to kill Silver Saber. Shui Lingzi saw this and quickly reached out to stop him. She said in a low voice, "Fire Spirit, don't do it anymore." Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Fire Spirit reacted and immediately took back his fist. He coldly snorted and didn't say anything else. Fire Spirit didn't dare to do anything, but Silver Saber didn't care. He pointed at Fire Spirit and angrily shouted, "Fire Spirit, who are you trying to scare? If you have the ability, then do it." Hearing Silver Saber's words, Fire Spirit was so angry that the veins on his forehead were popping. His breathing became rapid and his heart was beating even faster. Shui Lingzi saw Fire Spirit's expression and quickly pushed him to the side so that he wouldn't have to do anything. Water Spirit pushed Fire Spirit aside and turned to look at Silverblade. She sighed and said, "Silverblade, why don't you understand? Even if it's level 20 equipment, our Heaven's Craftsman faction can't take it out so easily. But you insist on level 25 equipment. Aren't you just making things difficult for us?" Silver Saber shook his head and coldly laughed. "Shui Lingzi, you don't have to feel bad. As long as you let Fire Spirit throw a punch, then everything will be solved." After hearing Silver Saber's words, Shui Lingzi took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. She turned to Li Shan and slowly asked, "Li Shan, Silver Saber is a member of your Godly Saber sect. Don't you care?" Shui Lingzi had already discussed the conditions with Li Shan, but now Silver Saber was stopping her again. Chapter 512. After hearing Water Spirit's words, Li Shan froze for a moment. Then, he turned to look at Dao and bitterly smiled in his heart. Dao had already gone crazy. What should he do? Actually, in the depths of Li Shan's heart, he didn't want to do anything. This was because Dao's actions were beneficial to him. If Dao really did get a level 25 equipment, it would be an unexpected harvest. Dao was almost crippled. Even if he got a level 25 equipment, he wouldn't be able to keep it for himself. Wouldn't it become someone else's? and the two brothers were right beside Yin Dao. In other words, no matter what kind of equipment Yin Dao got, the two brothers would be the first to get it. Although the two brothers were already protectors of the Godly Knife faction, such a position was far from enough. Yin Dao wanted to become a disciple of the Godly Knife faction's leader. Li Shanshan also wanted to take a step forward. As for this level 25 equipment, it was undoubtedly the best stepping stone and pathfinding stone. If Silver Saber obtained this equipment, then the two of them would be the ones who would benefit the most. Therefore, Li Shanshan didn't want to get involved in this matter. Even if Yin Dao didn't want to do it, he still wanted to encourage him to do it. Thinking of this, Li Shanshan pretended to frown and bitterly smiled. Water Spirit, you have seen Yin Dao's situation. Even if I am a protector, my words don't seem to have any effect. What can I do? Hearing Li Shanshan's words, Water Spirit sighed. In other words, you don't care about Yin Dao's actions? Hearing this, Li Shanshan sternly said, I can ignore Yin Dao's actions, but Yin Dao is still a member of the Godly Knife sect. As the protector of the Godly Knife sect, I must be responsible for his safety. Water Spirit suddenly sneered. I have already given 2 level 20 equipment to the Godly Knife faction. These 2 level 20 equipment are to make the Godly Knife faction not care about this matter. Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing, but I've already promised to give you the equipment. Why is Yin Dao still blocking us? Don't tell me that as a protector of the Godly Knife faction, you have no responsibility to care about this matter? Li Mingshan sighed and pointed at the silver knife. Shui Lingzi, as you can see, the silver knife has been sealed. How am I supposed to control it? At this moment, Li Mingshui suddenly spoke up. It's not that we don't want to interfere. These are 2 different matters. We can ignore you taking away Kikyaman's people, but you injured Silver Knife. It seems that you have to explain yourself. Water Spirit sneered. Li Mingshui, what kind of explanation do you want? I've already agreed to give you 2 pieces of level 20 equipment. Are you still not satisfied? Li Mingshui shook his head. I'm very satisfied with the 2 pieces of level 20 equipment you gave us. I've decided not to stop you from taking away Kikyaman's men. Speaking up to this point, Li Mingshui paused for a moment before continuing. However, the equipment you gave me is only for this matter. You injured Silver Knife, so this matter has to be dealt with separately. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Shui Lingzi angrily said, Li Mingshui, didn't you hear that Silver Knife wants a piece of level 25 equipment from me? Li Mingshui helplessly shrugged. Shui Lingzi, I can't do anything about this. You injured Silver Knife, so you have to resolve this matter. Us 2 brothers can't help you. Just as Li Mingshui finished speaking, Fire Spirit suddenly roared and rushed out. Li Mingshui, are you saying that we're going to let Silver Knife cause trouble here? Li Mingshui shook his head. As long as you agree to Silver Knife's conditions, he will naturally be obedient and recuperate. Speaking up to this point, Li Mingshui paused and turned to look at Silver Knife before continuing. Silver Knife, the reason he's still causing trouble is because you didn't agree to his conditions. It has nothing to do with us. Fire Spirit angrily said. What if I end him? Does that have nothing to do with you? Li Mingshui shook his head. This is different. You can talk, but you can't fight. No matter what, Silver Knife is still a disciple of our Godly Knife sect. If something happens to him here, then we can't do anything when we return. Fire Spirit coldly laughed. So you're saying that if I hit him, you'll stop me? Li Mingshui seriously nodded. I've said it before. No matter what, Silver Knife is a disciple of our Godly Knife sect. We won't allow outsiders to harm our disciples. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Fire Spirit was about to speak, but was interrupted by Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi patted Fire Spirit's shoulder and signaled him to stop talking. Then she turned to Li Mingshui and coldly laughed. Li Mingshui, then tell me, Silver Knife said that he wants a piece of level 25 equipment. How should we negotiate? Li Mingshui shook his head. That's none of my business. How you want to negotiate is your business. It has nothing to do with me. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi took a deep breath and suddenly slapped Yin Dao's face with a backhand. Silver Knife was barely standing. After being slapped by Shui Lingzi, he screamed and fell to the ground. Seeing Shui Lingzi suddenly attack, Li Mingshui suddenly grabbed the handle of his knife and angrily said, "Shui Lingzi, did you not hear what I just said?" Shui Lingzi shook her head and looked at Silver Knife on the ground. Then she coldly laughed and said, "I want to see your reaction." Li Mingshan suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Shui Lingzi, you don't need to try. If you dare to attack again, my knife will also attack." Shui Lingzi nodded and suddenly kicked Silver Knife. Then she turned to look at Li Mingshan. "You see, I didn't attack this time." Li Mingshan's face suddenly became pale. He tightly grabbed the handle of his knife and coldly said, "Shui Lingzi, you want me to attack?" Shui Lingzi shook her head. "Li Mingshan, don't get too excited. You see, I really didn't attack, right?" Seeing this, Li Mingshan's eyes immediately spat out fire. He took a step forward and slowly pulled out his knife. At this moment, a figure flashed and shadowless blocked in front of him. "Li Mingshan, why are you so angry?" Shui Lingzi was just joking. "Don't take it seriously. Everyone should be peaceful." Li Mingshan turned to look at Shadowless and coldly said, "Shadowless, are you speaking for Shui Lingzi?" Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shadowless hurriedly waved his hand. "Li Mingshan, you misunderstood. I'm just advising everyone to talk things out. Don't attack." Hearing this, Li Mingshan pointed at Shui Lingzi and angrily said, "Shui Lingzi hit my godly knife sect disciple in front of me. Is this a misunderstanding?" Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shadowless turned to Shui Lingzi and asked with a smile, "Shui Lingzi, was it a misunderstanding?" Shui Lingzi nodded. "Misunderstanding? It was definitely a misunderstanding." Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. "Shadowless, why would I hit someone?" Chapter 5:13. Before Shadowless could reply, Li Mingshan had already roared angrily. "Shui Lingzi, don't talk nonsense. Tell me, who was it that hit the silver blade?" Shui Lingzi shook her head. "I didn't hit it. I only used my feet." Hearing this, Li Shanshan couldn't bear it any longer. Ignoring Wu Ying's attempt to stop him, Li Shanshan leaped into the air and jumped over Wu Ying. In the next moment, Li Shanshan's blade flashed and turned into a silver light that slashed towards Shui Lingzi. Li Shanshan's martial arts were high, and he had practiced this saber for 30 years. At this moment, the saber light shined brightly and was as sharp as lightning. In just an instant, the saber light was already not far from Shui Lingzi. Seeing this, Shui Lingzi panicked, but a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Seeing the blade coming, Shui Lingzi quickly jumped back, wanting to avoid Li Shanshan's attack. Li Shanshan's attack was as fast as lightning, and before anyone could react, he had already arrived in front of Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi leapt back and leapt high into the air. Just as Li Mingshan's saber light was about to reach her, she was able to dodge it by the skin of her teeth. Li Shanshan's blade missed, and he sneered. He immediately took a step forward, and the blade in his hand shined brightly. Like the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves, he swept it towards Shui Lingzi with an unstoppable momentum. Shui Lingzi's action just now had completely angered Li Shanshan. In this attack, Li Shanshan used 70% of his strength, vowing to teach Shui Lingzi a lesson. As soon as Shui Lingzi landed, she saw Li Shanshan's saber coming at her again. Her face was filled with shock as she hurriedly let out a cry and leapt backwards. Seeing Shui Lingzi's quick reaction, Li Shanshan secretly felt that it was a pity. But he didn't withdraw his blade, and instead rushed forward with all his strength. The blade in his hand changed from a horizontal sweep to an upward slash, ready to attack Shui Lingzi in the air. Stop! Stop! Just as Shui Lingzi jumped up, Li Shanshan's face suddenly changed and cold sweat flowed down his back. Water Spirit leaped into the air and dodged Li Mingshan's attack, but the silver blade behind her appeared in front of Li Mingshan's eyes as she dodged. "Get someone else to do the dirty work." Seeing that the saber was about to hit the silver saber, Li Shan suddenly roared and used all his strength to move the saber away. The saber in Li Shan's hand stuck close to the side of Yin Dao's body. Because of the quick change of movement and the change of strength, Li Shan's body tilted. Under the effect of the original momentum, his whole body hit Yin Dao. This force was unleashed by Li Shan in order to chase after Water Spirit Z, so the force he used was not small. After his figure slammed into Yin Dao let out a miserable howl as the two of them tumbled backwards. Li Shan and Silver Knife rolled on the ground and immediately jumped up. Only Silver Knife was left on the ground, howling. At this time, Li Mingshui also quickly came to Li Shan's side. "Big brother, how was it?" Li Shan did not answer, but fiercely stared at Shui Lingzi. After a long while, he coldly said, "Shui Lingzi, what a good move to kill with a borrowed knife. Really good. Just now, if I was a little bit late, your plan would have succeeded. What a pity." Hearing Li Shan's words, Shui Lingzi angrily said, "Li Shan, it was you who stabbed me. How can you blame me?" Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, "Just now, if I was a little bit slower, I'm afraid I would have been cut by your saber. How do you want to settle this account?" Li Shan ignored Shui Lingzi and turned his head to check on Yin Dao's injuries. After Yin Dao was hit by Li Shan, he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. The originally heavy injury became even more serious. Not only that, even his left arm was fractured by the force of the impact. Looking at Yin Dao, who was holding his left arm and howling in pain, Li Shan's eyes slowly narrowed. He clenched his teeth tightly, and a wave of anger surged from the bottom of his heart and quickly burst forth. "Shui Lingzi, give me your life." Following Li Shan's roar, a dazzling silver light suddenly appeared in front of them. In this dazzling silver light, a blue saber aura was faintly discernible. Saber aura. Seeing this scene, Shui Lingzi was taken aback. Shui Lingzi knew that Li Shan was serious this time. An attack that could release a saber aura was definitely extraordinary. Shui Lingzi did not dare to be negligent. She hurriedly clenched her fists and quickly circulated her Zhen Qi. In just a moment, a mass of Zhen Qi was condensed in front of her. It was also at this time that two figures flashed and appeared in front of Shui Lingzi and Li Shan. "Stop! Stop! Why do you have to hurt our friendship?" It was Wu Kedi and Shadowless. Wu Kedi stopped Li Shan. "Li Shan, why are you so angry? Let's talk things over." Shadowless stopped Shui Lingzi. "Shui Lingzi, stop, otherwise it will be too late for regrets." Li Shan heard Wu Kedi's words, but did not appreciate it. He angrily said, "Wu Kedi, get out of the way, otherwise if I hurt you, don't blame me." Wu Kedi hurriedly smiled and said, "Li Mingshan, are you here because you're angry?" Li Shan angrily said, "Shui Lingzi, this old thing actually dared to play tricks with me. If I didn't stop fast enough, I'm afraid I would have fallen into his trap. Shui Lingzi is really too much. I will never let him go." Wu Kedi shook his head and asked in a low voice, "Li Shan, can you solve the problem by getting angry?" Wu Kedi paused for a moment before continuing, "No, not only can it not, but it will also ruin things, you know?" Li Shan fiercely stared at Shui Lingzi and coldly said, "Today, no matter what, I have to vent my anger." Wu Kedi sneered, "And then? Even if you do vent your anger, what benefits will you get?" Hearing Wu Kedi's words, Li Shan was stunned for a moment before sighing and putting away his sword. Li Shan was very clear that if he had hit Shui Lingzi, not only would he not get any benefits, he would also not be able to go back and report it. If the Godly Knife faction found out that 2 pieces of level 20 equipment had been destroyed by him with a single slash, it would be even worse. Li Shan turned his head and looked at Silverblade. Maybe he would end up like Silverblade. Wu Kedi saw Li Shan put away his sword and also let out a sigh of relief. Wu Kedi came to stop the fight not because he was kind, but because if Shui Lingzi was killed by Li Shan, then who would he ask for the equipment? Although Shui Lingzi was important, The two level 20 equipment were even more important. Shadowless and Wu Kadi had the same idea. If Shui Lingzi was killed, then the two level 20 equipment would also be gone. Shui Lingzi did not want to fight. He was not like Li Shan, who was already furious. He knew what he was doing, killing with a borrowed knife. That's right, that was what Shui Lingzi wanted to do. Since he couldn't do it himself, then he would let Li Shan do it. Chapter 514. Li Shan looked at Shui Lingzi. Although he was still angry, after listening to Wu Kadi's words, he knew that it was useless to be angry. Speaking up to hear, Li Shan took a step forward and coldly said, Shui Lingzi, shouldn't you give me an explanation for what you did? Shui Lingzi heard this and shook her head. Li Shan, I don't know what you're talking about. What explanation should I give you? Li Shan sneered. Shui Lingzi, since you dared to do it, you should have the courage to admit it. Otherwise, what kind of hero are you? Shui Lingzi shook her head again. I'm not a hero. I don't know what I did wrong, so I don't know what I should do. Li Shan angrily said, Shui Lingzi, why are you being so secretive? You want to borrow my hand to kill Yin Dao. Do you think others are fools that can't see it? Without waiting for Shui Lingzi to speak, Fire Spirit loudly said, Li Shan, don't talk nonsense. Just now you suddenly attacked my big brother. We haven't even settled this debt with you yet, but you want to settle it with us. Do you really think we Tiangongmen are easy to bully? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Shan sneered. I don't know if the Tiangongmen are easy to bully or not, but today I know that the Tiangongmen are very cunning. Borrowing someone else's knife to kill. You really are the heroes of the South region. This one admires you. After saying this, Li Shan cupped his hands towards Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi, good job. This one admires you. After hearing Li Shan's words, Shui Lingzi suddenly turned to look at Yin Dao and sighed. Yin Dao's injury was already very serious. Now that he was hit by you, it seems to be even more serious. Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Li Shan, as the protector of the Godly Sword sect, don't you want to see the injuries of your elite disciples? Or is it that the protector of the Godly Sword sect can injure your disciples at will? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Shan remembered Yin Dao and quickly turned to look at him. When he saw Yin Dao's appearance, he was shocked. Originally, he could barely sit up, but now he could only lie there and wail. Yin Dao's blood-curdling screams were very miserable, and his injuries were very serious. Originally, Shui Lingzi felt pity for him. But now, after hearing Yin Dao's screams, she felt an inexplicable, comfortable feeling in her heart. For the sake of that level 25 equipment, Silverblade had pushed Water Spirit to the brink of giving up on this plan. If Silverblade had died, it would have saved them a lot of trouble. Shui Lingzi knew that Yin Dao wouldn't last much longer because his eyes had already fallen into a daze. His violent coughing and coughing up blood all proved this. As long as Silver Knife died in Li Mingshan's hands, the equipment issue would naturally be over. Li Mingshan naturally knew this. He quickly walked to Yin Dao's side, squatted down, and softly asked, Yin Dao, how are you? Yin Dao covered the place where his ribs were broken and coughed nonstop. While coughing, he kept coughing up blood. With such a serious injury, Yin Dao was about to fall into a coma. In a daze, he heard Li Mingshan's question. After hearing Li Mingshan's voice, Yin Dao's originally relaxed heart suddenly tensed up again. The thoughts in his mind also became clear again. Level 25 equipment. I must get level 25 equipment. Only with level 25 equipment can I become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect master and stand out among my peers. Yin Dao's injury was like a dried-up oil lamp. It was about to run out of oil, but his belief was like the oil. After hearing Li Mingshan's call, the oil once again flowed into the dried-up oil lamp, reigniting his belief. Yin Dao violently coughed a few times. Although his injury was still very serious, his lifeless eyes once again brightened up. Seeing that Yin Dao's eyes had regained their vitality, Li Mingshan was overjoyed and quickly whispered, Yin Dao, wake up! Wake up! Following Li Mingshan's call, Yin Dao actually regained consciousness. Although the intense pain made his expression somewhat distorted, his spirit was still very high. Lord Protector, I'm fine. I still have to settle accounts with Shui Lingzi. If he didn't give me level 25 equipment, I definitely wouldn't have let him take away Kikyaman's people. Seeing that Yin Dao had regained his fighting spirit, Li Mingshan only wanted to laugh to the sky. He originally thought that Yin Dao was finished, but he didn't expect this kid's vitality to be so strong. Li Mingshan was overjoyed, but Shui Lingzi's heart was filled with sorrow. If Yin Dao had been killed by Li Mingshan this time, then the equipment issue would naturally be over. But this kid actually came back to life. This really made her angry and hateful. After hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi stepped forward and kicked him into a pulp to relieve the hatred in her heart. He was already in such a state, but instead of thinking about healing his injuries, he was still thinking about level 25 equipment. Water Spirit had been in the Heaven's Craftsman Gate for so many years, yet she hadn't obtained a single piece of level 25 equipment. But this brat's silver knife actually wanted to rely on his injuries to obtain a piece of level 25 equipment. This was simply a dream. However, although Shui Lingzi's heart was filled with hatred, her face didn't change at all. Looking at Li Mingshan, who had already stood up, she suddenly laughed and said, Li Mingshan, you injured Yin Dao so badly. I think if you don't hurry up and treat him, I'm afraid this elite of the Godly Sword sect will die. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan sneered. Shui Lingzi, don't say such nonsense. You must be very disappointed right now. Shui Lingzi shook her head and pretended to be confused. Li Mingshan, why should I be disappointed? Yin Dao isn't a disciple of the Tiangomen. Li Mingshan stepped forward and faintly said, Shui Lingzi, if Yin Dao dies, then you naturally won't be responsible for it. You can forget about the compensation. Speaking up to here, Li Mingshan's tone paused for a moment before continuing. But Yin Dao didn't die. I'm afraid there's still many things between you two to discuss. Haha. Speaking up to here, Li Mingshan couldn't help but laugh. Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shui Lingzi couldn't help but frown, but very quickly, she relaxed again. Li Mingshan, regarding the equipment, I'm not in a hurry because I have plenty of time. I'll wait here. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused and turned to look at Yin Dao before continuing. Although I have time to wait, I don't know if your Godly Sword sect's elite disciple Yin Dao has the time to wait. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan couldn't help but frown. He was very clear that Yin Dao's injuries were very serious. If he didn't hurry up and treat him, he would really die. Chapter 515. Silver Knife wanted level 25 equipment. Li Mingshan wanted level 25 equipment even more, so Silver Knife couldn't die. But if he healed Silver Knife's injuries now, then Silver Knife's use would be over. Thinking of this, Li Mingshan was a bit embarrassed. Seeing Li Mingshan not speaking, Shui Lingzi sneered and said, Li Mingshan, you also saw that even if Silver Knife's spirit is very good now, he won't be able to hold on for long. If you want to watch him die, then just watch and see how long Silver Knife can hold on. Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Li Mingshan didn't know how to respond. Li Mingshui suddenly shouted, Shui Lingzi, our Godly Knife sects matter. How can you, Tiangomen, interfere? Saving Silver Knife is our Godly Knife sect's matter, so please don't meddle in other people's business. Shui Lingzi nodded. Okay, then I won't meddle in your business. Let's see who can take down who first. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Don't forget, the reason why Silver Knife died was because of Li Mingshan. I hope you all remember this. Hearing this, Li Mingshui flew into a rage. He pointed at Shui Lingzi and said, Shui Lingzi, you tell me clearly, who was it that harmed Yin Dao? If it weren't for your tricks, how could my big brother have accidentally injured Yin Dao? This is all your fault. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Shui Lingzi shook her head. Li Mingshui, what you said is wrong. Everyone here is watching. It was your big brother who attacked me first. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Li Ming Shui, it's not like you don't know your big brother's martial arts. Under his sneak attack, how many of us here could safely escape? To be honest, if it wasn't for my good luck, I'm afraid I would have already been killed by your big brother. Now you're saying that it was a trick, then tell me the evidence. In that kind of life and death situation, who could do this? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan was stunned, and Li Mingshui was also speechless. Li Shanshan's slash was filled with anger, so its power couldn't be underestimated. Its speed was even more astonishing. It was simply impossible to calculate so many things in such a short time. Li Mingshan looked at Shui Lingzi and thought to himself, could it be that Shui Lingzi was really innocent? Just now, he was only trying to dodge his attack and didn't want to borrow a knife to kill him. Thinking of this, Li Mingshan suddenly felt a little apologetic. He misunderstood Shui Lingzi and thought that he did it intentionally. Among all these people, only Shui Lingzi was sneering in her heart. From the moment he came to Yin Dao's side, he had already started calculating. Water Spirit had no way to break out of Yin Dao's trap. Silver Knife was a madman. Even if you try to reason with him, how could a madman try to reason with you? The only thing left in Silver Knife's mind was the level 25 equipment. Other than that, there was nothing else. In order to successfully complete his mission, he had to get rid of Silver Knife to break out of this situation. Shui Lingzi had already understood this point, so from the moment he came to Yin Dao's side, he had already started calculating. Shui Lingzi took 4 steps back from Yin Dao's side and deliberately provoked Li Mingshan. After Li Mingshan attacked, he took 4 steps back and stood in front of Yin Dao. Moreover, Shui Lingzi had already predicted that Li Mingshan would chase after him, so he jumped up at the last moment. His goal was naturally to make Yin Dao appear in front of Li Mingshan. This plan was perfect. The only imperfection was that Li Shanshan didn't hurt Silver Knife, but only hurt him. However, even though the plan wasn't perfect, it was enough. Looking at Yin Dao's injuries, Shui Lingzi estimated that Yin Dao wouldn't be able to stop for long before he died. If Li Mingshan healed Yin Dao's injuries, then everything would be fine. Even if he had to compensate, it wouldn't be the level 25 equipment. If Li Mingshan didn't heal Yin Dao's injuries, then it didn't matter. Shui Lingzi had plenty of time to wait for Yin Dao to die. Once Yin Dao died, then Shui Lingzi wouldn't have to take too much responsibility. After all, Li Mingshan was the one who dealt the final blow. So, no matter what happened next, it would be beneficial to Shui Lingzi. Seeing Li Mingshan still hesitating, Shui Lingzi suddenly said, Li Mingshan, are you really not willing to heal Yin Dao? After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan clenched his teeth. Although he wanted that level 25 equipment, in front of so many people, he couldn't just watch the godly blade sect's disciple die in front of him. So, Li Mingshan decided to heal Yin Dao. As for the level 25 equipment, he would have to wait for an opportunity. Thinking of this, Li Mingshan turned to look at Yin Dao and coldly said, Yin Dao, let me heal you. After hearing Li Mingshan's words, Yin Dao struggled on the ground for a while, but couldn't get up. He could only lie there and say, no need. If Shui Lingzi isn't willing to compensate me for the equipment, then I won't let anyone heal me. Hearing Yin Dao's words, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. This kid was too ruthless. For the level 25 equipment, he was willing to give up his life. Everyone could see that Yin Dao's injuries were too serious. If he didn't hurry up and heal him, then he wouldn't be able to last much longer. But even so, Yin Dao still refused Li Mingshan's good intentions. Li Mingshan took a deep breath and said, Yin Dao, don't insist. If you insist your injuries, I'm afraid. Cough, cough. Before Li Mingshan could finish, he was interrupted by Yin Dao's violent coughing. After the coughing subsided, Yin Dao gasped for breath and said, no. No, unless Shui Lingzi agrees to my conditions, I will never treat his injuries. Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi's heart was suddenly filled with anger. She took a step forward and said coldly, Yin Dao, what are you doing? You know that I won't give you the level 25 equipment, but you still insist. Don't you know that you are making things difficult for me and for yourself? Indao, do you understand my words? Towards the end, Shui Lingzi was almost shouting. This also showed how angry she was. It was good for people to be ambitious, but they also had to have a sense of propriety. Perhaps everyone knew that no matter how much Indao insisted, he wouldn't be able to get the level 25 equipment he dreamed of. But Indao still insisted, which made Shui Lingzi very angry. Chapter 516. Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Dao's eyes suddenly widened as he fiercely stared at Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi, what nonsense are you talking about? You don't need to care about my business. You should think about how to give me level 25 equipment. Shui Lingzi shook her head. Dao, I don't have it. Don't you understand that it's impossible for you to get level 25 equipment? Dao suddenly asked. Shui Lingzi, what if you can't take away Kikyaman's people? Hearing Dao's words, Shui Lingzi froze for a moment before she turned her head to look at Dao and coldly said, Dao, this is my business. You don't need to care about it. Dao ignored Shui Lingzi's words and coldly said, Shui Lingzi, in fact, even if you don't say it, I already know that if you can't take back Kikyaman's people, I'm afraid your ending won't be any better. Speaking up to here, Dao paused for a moment before continuing. Shui Lingzi, in my opinion, if you can't take back Kikyaman's people, then even if it's you, I'm afraid you won't be able to stay in the Tian Gongmen. Hearing Dao's words, Shui Lingzi angrily said, Dao, don't talk nonsense. Even if I can't take back Kikyaman's people, it's not a big problem. How can I not be able to stay in the Tian Gongmen? Dao once again let out a cold laugh. Shui Lingzi, you don't need to lie to me. If it's really not a big problem, would you still be here talking to me? Shui Lingzi coldly said, why not? Dao heard this and disdainfully shook his head. The matter of taking away Kikyaman, I can see that it's very urgent and very important. Before such an important matter, you still have the leisure to talk to me. Do you think I'll believe you? Hearing Dao's words, Shui Lingzi clenched her teeth and took a deep breath before continuing. Dao, you are right. Taking away Kikyaman is indeed very important, and I must take them away today. But why am I still talking to you? Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused and turned to look at Dao. His eyes lit up, and after a while he continued, because when I saw you, I knew you were a great talent, so I wanted to have a talk with you. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, Dao, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but you're just like me back then. Both of you are ambitious and eager to stand out. In fact, I can even see my own shadow in you. Water Spirit turned to look at Dao, and after a long while, she suddenly asked in a low voice, Dao, I want to accept you as my disciple. Are you willing? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Dao was stunned and didn't recover for a long time. On the side, Li Mingshan couldn't bear it anymore and snapped out. Shui Lingzi, what are you trying to do? Shui Lingzi shook her head. Nothing. I'm just lamenting, really nothing. Li Mingshan angrily said, Shui Lingzi, you snatched our godly blade sex disciple in front of me, and you still dare to say nothing to me. Do you think I, Li Mingshan, am a fool? Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shui Lingzi sighed. Li Mingshan, do you know when I first entered the Tian Gongmen, I was just like Dao, anxious, trying to get the recognition of others, that kind of helplessness. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused and turned to look at Dao, and after a long while, she continued. At that time, I was just like Dao now, with the same kind of thoughts, trying to fight for a future for myself. Hearing this, Li Mingshan's face turned livid, and he couldn't bear it anymore and roared, interrupting Shui Lingzi's words. Shui Lingzi, that's enough. If you continue to talk nonsense, don't blame me for being impolite. Shui Lingzi turned to look at Li Mingshan and sighed again. Li Mingshan, Dao is indeed a talent. Am I wrong? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan clenched his teeth and took a deep breath, calming his irritable mood, and slowly said, Shui Lingzi, don't play tricks in front of me, or else my blade won't forgive you. Shui Lingzi frowned. Li Mingshan, you're from the Godly Blade sect, and I'm from the Tiangongmen. We belong to two different sections. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment, then continued. Also, I don't think I've heard of people from other sections. Is it a matter of another sect? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan stepped forward and stared at Shui Lingzi for a long while, then slowly said, Shui Lingzi, my patience has a bottom line. Don't provoke me. I'm telling you, my blade isn't something you can block. Shui Lingzi coldly said, Li Mingshan, you're trying to scare me. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment, then took a step forward and continued. Li Mingshan, do you think I'm afraid of you? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan grabbed the handle of his blade and coldly said, Shui Lingzi, do you want to try? Shui Lingzi shook her head. No, I don't want to try whether your blade is fast or not. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan let go of his blade and let out a long sigh. He didn't want to fight with Shui Lingzi. After suffering a loss from her, he didn't want to fight with her even more. Li Mingshan and Shui Lingzi didn't have any enmity, nor did they have any grudges. The only problem was the level 25 equipment that Yin Dao wanted. Just now, Li Mingshan couldn't allow Shui Lingzi to continue with her words. In fact, Li Mingshan was very clear-headed. He knew that it was almost impossible to get the level 25 equipment that Yin Dao wanted. However, as long as there was a chance, Yin Dao wouldn't give up, and neither would Li Mingshan. If he could really get his hands on that legendary level 25 equipment, then Li Mingshan would have made a fortune. The most important thing was that even if he couldn't get that level 25 equipment, even a level 20 equipment would be good. Don't think that level 20 equipment wasn't anything special. In fact, many people haven't seen level 20 equipment in their entire life. Therefore, Li Mingshan didn't want to fight with Shui Lingzi, because no matter who won or lost, it wouldn't benefit him. If Shui Lingzi won, then she wouldn't give him anything. Now that Water Spirit had lost, if she flew into a rage out of humiliation and turned around to leave, that would be bad. Even the level 20 equipment that was already in his hands would be gone. Thinking of this, Li Mingshan put away his blade, looked at Shui Lingzi, and said with a smile, Shui Lingzi, it's better that we don't fight. Everyone can be friendly. Isn't that good? Listening to Li Mingshan's words, Shui Lingzi nodded with a smile. Yes, we only talk and don't fight. That's really good. I've always praised everyone for doing that. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. So, I also only talk and don't fight. Li Mingshan, am I right? Chapter 517. Li Mingshan heard Shui Lingzi's words and paused for a moment. Then, he nodded but didn't say anything. Shui Lingzi smiled and said, So, I only talked to Yin Dao and didn't make a move. Hearing this, Li Mingshan couldn't help but frown. Shui Lingzi, what do you want? Shui Lingzi smiled and nodded. Li Mingshan, you said it yourself. We only talked and didn't make a move. Did you see me make a move? Li Mingshan gritted his teeth and shook his head. You didn't, but before Li Mingshan could finish his words, he was interrupted by Shui Lingzi. Since I didn't make a move and only talked, why did you make a move? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan's anger suddenly surged, and he snapped. Shui Lingzi, don't play tricks with me. Do you think I don't know what you were doing? Shui Lingzi shook her head. Li Mingshan, did I make a move? This time, without waiting for Li Mingshan to answer, Li Mingshui already shouted. Shui Lingzi, you dare to rob our godly sword sex disciple? What are your intentions? Shui Lingzi shook her head again and said coldly, Is Yin Dao from your godly sword sect? Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi didn't wait for Li Mingshui to answer and continued. How come I didn't see it? Speaking up to here, Yin Dao paused for a moment before continuing. If Yin Dao was from our Tiangongmen would have already treated his injuries. How could we just watch his injuries get worse and worse without doing anything? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshui and Li Mingshan's eyes became livid. After a while, Li Mingshan said coldly, Shui Lingzi, don't talk nonsense. Didn't you see that I was about to treat Yin Dao's injuries? Shui Lingzi shook her head. No, I didn't see anything. I only saw Yin Dao's injuries getting worse and worse. Other than that, I didn't see anything. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshui angrily said, if it weren't for you refusing to compensate for Yin Dao's equipment, how could we not treat him? In the end, it's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Yin Dao wouldn't have suffered such heavy injuries. Water Spirit heard this and sneered. When we injured Yin Dao, he wasn't injured like this. If it wasn't for Li Shan's sneak attacking me, how could Yin Dao's injuries be so serious? Li Mingshui shouted, Shui Lingzi, this is all part of your scheme. My big brother was tricked by you and accidentally injured the silver knife. After hearing Li Mingshui's words, Shui Lingzi shook her head and said, let's not talk about who injured Yin Dao. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, Yin Dao has already suffered such a heavy injury, but as the protectors of the godly blade sect, you're just watching Yin Dao get injured and not treating him. Have you done your duty as protectors? Li Mingshui pointed at Yin Dao and angrily said, I want to treat Yin Dao's injuries, but he refused, so I didn't treat him. Speaking up to here, Yin Dao's tone paused for a moment. Then he sneered and continued, Shui Lingzi, if you had compensated for Yin Dao's equipment earlier, he wouldn't have refused to let me treat his injuries. Shui Lingzi sneered. In the end, is this all my fault? Li Mingshui looked at Shui Lingzi and said word by word, as long as you are willing to compensate for Yin Dao's equipment, he will definitely agree to let us treat his injuries. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi shook her head. I don't have any. Not to mention level 25 equipment. I don't even have level 20 equipment. What can I use to compensate? Li Mingshui sneered. Shui Lingzi, it's your problem if you can't take out the equipment. You can think of a way. It has nothing to do with us. As long as you don't take out the equipment, Yin Dao will definitely not let us treat his injuries. If anything happens to Yin Dao, it will all be because of you. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Shui Lingzi turned to look at Yin Dao and said with a smile, Yin Dao, I sympathize with you. I didn't think that the protectors of the godly blade sect would be this kind of person. For a piece of equipment, they would even disregard their own disciples. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, according to Li Mingshui's expectations, Yin Dao would immediately refute and ask for the level 25 equipment. However, Yin Dao remained silent and didn't say a word. Seeing this scene, Li Mingshui was a bit worried. He knew that Shui Lingzi's words must have had an effect. Thinking of this, Li Mingshui shouted at Yin Dao, don't be afraid. As long as we are here, we will definitely support you. Don't forget, the Godly Blade Sect is standing behind you. If anything happens, the Godly Blade Sect will definitely not stand by and watch. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Shui Lingzi turned her head and angrily said, Li Mingshui, what do you mean by this? Are you going to support your disciples extorting others? Li Mingshui shook his head. We don't care what our disciples do. We will support them. Hearing Li Mingshui's words, Yin Dao's eyes gradually lit up. He turned to look at Shui Lingzi and said with a smile, Shui Lingzi, thank you for your words. However, you also heard that I am a disciple of the Godly Blade Sect. I will always be a disciple of the Godly Blade Sect. Speaking up to here, Yin Dao paused for a moment before continuing. So, Shui Lingzi, the conditions we discussed just now still count. I hope you can take out the level 25 equipment as soon as possible. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi nodded. Yin Dao, have you thought it through? Yin Dao sneered. Shui Lingzi, I have thought it through. You want to trick me into letting you go this time. Am I right? Speaking up to here, Yin Dao suddenly clenched his teeth and his eyes became cold. Shui Lingzi, you said that we're the same kind of people. If we were in each other's shoes, I would also use all kinds of methods to complete this mission. Silver Knife sighed. Unfortunately, you also said that we're the same kind of people, so you can't lie to me. I know what you're trying to say, so don't say anything more. Hurry up and take out that level 25 equipment. We'll go our separate ways. Shui Lingzi looked at Yin Dao and gnashed her teeth. This Yin Dao was too hateful. No matter what she said, he wouldn't back down. Shui Lingzi was very clear that she wasn't a person like Yin Dao, because she knew very well what she could get and how to get it. Yin Dao didn't know these things. He was always dreaming of unrealistic things. Thinking up to here, Shui Lingzi sighed. Yin Dao, if I said that you misunderstood me, would you believe me? Yin Dao sneered. Shui Lingzi, do you think I would believe you? Shui Lingzi nodded. You must believe me because what I said is true. Chapter 518. After listening to Water Spirit's words, Silver Knife sneered and slowly said, Water Spirit, if you want me to believe you, then give me that level 25 equipment, and I will naturally believe you. If you don't take out that equipment, then you are lying to me. Water Spirit clenched her teeth, suppressing her anger as she looked up at the silver blade and sighed. Silver Knife, why do you still not understand even after saying so much? Level 25 equipment. Needless to say, I don't have it. Even Ty Gallman wouldn't be able to take it out in a short period of time. Where do you want me to go to make you level 25 equipment? Silver Knife shook his head. Suddenly, a wave of discomfort surged from his stomach, causing him to cough violently. Looking at the blood coming out of Silver Knife's mouth, Water Spirit didn't know what to feel. Looking at Silver Knife's current state, with her many years of experience, she knew that Silver Knife wouldn't last much longer. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? If Silver Knife died now, then she wouldn't have to care about that equipment anymore. But Silver Knife was still alive. Seeing him disappear in front of her eyes, Water Spirit couldn't bear it. Looking at the coughing Silver Knife, Water Spirit sighed and slowly said, Silver Knife, don't you understand? There are some things we can do, but there are some things we can't get even if we do it. So why do we have to do it? Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing. Just like this time, you clearly know that you can't get a level 25 equipment, but you still stubbornly insist on getting that level 25 equipment. The gains don't make up for the losses. If you change your condition, such as a level 10 equipment, or a level 15 equipment, or even a level 20 equipment, I might give it to you since you are so ambitious. But a level 25 equipment, not only can you not get it, even I can't get it. So why do you still have to set such an impossible condition? Silver Knife tried to straighten his back because of the coughing. There was a trace of blood on his mouth. Water Spirit, don't make it sound so nice, as if you were doing it for me. Do you think I don't know your true purpose? Cough, cough. Speaking of this, Yin Dao coughed violently again. This time, the coughing was so severe that his body, which was originally standing up, fell to the ground because of the cough. The Silver Knife fell to the ground, causing him to scream in pain. Then it caused him to cough even more violently. This time his cough was too severe. It was probably because his broken ribs had pierced his internal organs, causing him to cough even more violently. Water Spirit looked at Silver Saber lying on the ground. Because of the violent coughing, Silver Saber's body was bent, and she didn't know whether she should sympathize with him or hate him. A stubborn fellow who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth actually dared to dream of reaching the heavens in a single step and becoming the disciple of the godly saber sex patriarch. Shui Lingzi was sure that with Yin Dao's temper, even if he really became a disciple of the godly saber sex sect master, he wouldn't have any great development. Looking at the coughing Yin Dao, Water Spirit turned to Li Shan and sighed. Li Shan, if you don't hurry up and treat him, I'm afraid it really will be too late. Seeing this, Li Shan was about to walk towards Yin Dao, but he was stopped by Li Mingshui. Li Mingshui took a step forward and stood in front of Water Spirit and said in a deep voice, Water Spirit, what about the conditions you guys discussed just now? If we go treat him now, isn't it a bit too early? Water Spirit looked at Li Mingshui in a daze. After a while, she suddenly said coldly, Yin Dao is your godly saber sex disciple. Whether you want to save him or not is your own business. You guys decide. Don't ask me anymore. After saying this, Water Spirit took 2 steps back and left Li Mingshui's line of sight. Water Spirit had already made up her mind to not care about this matter anymore. As for Dao's life and death, it would depend on his fate. Hearing Water Spirit's words, Li Mingshui was also stunned. He turned his head and looked at Dao on the ground, and his heart began to hesitate. Dao was in a very bad condition. Up until now, his coughing showed no signs of stopping. If it continued like this, Dao would die from coughing. Li Mingshui and Li Shan looked at each other and nodded slightly. Li Mingshui took 2 steps forward and came to Dao's side. He reached out and put his hand on Dao's shoulder, and a stream of Zhen Qi immediately flowed from his wrist to Dao's body. In just a short period of time, this powerful Zhen Qi flowed through Dao's body. Soon, Dao's coughing lessened a lot, and the painful expression on his face also calmed down a lot. Seeing that Dao was fine for the time being, Li Mingshui slowly let go of his hand and said in a deep voice, Dao, I have stabilized your injuries. Li Mingshui didn't say anything superfluous. He just said this and immediately took a step back, increasing the distance between him and Dao. Li Mingshui was very clear that this was Dao's stage, so he would let him play to his heart's content. Sure enough, things were just as Li Mingshui thought. Dao's injuries had just healed, and his spirit had just recovered. He immediately turned his head to look at Water Spirit and roared, Water Spirit, hurry up and take out level 25 equipment, or else I won't let you off. Hearing Dao's roar, Water Spirit only silently turned her head and didn't answer. Water Spirit was very clear that even if Dao's injuries were temporarily under control, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. It wouldn't be long before he fell down again. Therefore, Water Spirit decided not to waste any more words. She decided to use another tactic, which was to wait. When Dao really couldn't hold on anymore, she would come out. After Dao regained his spirit, he immediately began to roar at Water Spirit. But over and over again, he only said the same few words. Water Spirit, hurry up and give me my level 25 equipment. You scoundrel, you tricked me. You tricked me into giving you my level 25 equipment. Water Spirit, if you don't give me my level 25 equipment, I won't be polite anymore. Listening to Dao's nonsense, Water Spirit couldn't help but sneer in her heart. Dao's injuries were so heavy, yet he still dared to say such arrogant words, saying that he wouldn't let her off. She really didn't know where his courage came from. Although Water Spirit's temper was relatively good, but being scolded by such a nameless junior, she still felt a bit embarrassed. But after all, she was old and had enough patience. Even if Dao kept roaring, she still clenched her teeth and endured. Dao saw that after shouting for so long, Water Spirit didn't say a word, so he paused for a moment and rested. When Dao had rested enough, he suddenly turned his head to Sun Xiao and loudly said, Chapter 519. Dao turned to look at Sun Xiao and suddenly said, Sec Leader Sun, you guys go, I'll stop Shui Lingzi. Dao paused and took a few deep breaths before continuing. As long as I'm here, Shui Lingzi won't dare to do anything to you. Hearing Dao's words, everyone was shocked. No one had expected things to turn out this way. Shadowless turned to look at Li Shan and frowned. Li Shan, what's going on? Li Shan smiled bitterly and shook his head. How would I know? I can't control him. Hearing Li Shan's answer, Shadowless clenched his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. After watching for so long, everyone knew that Dao had gone crazy. What a crazy person did. There was no way to explain it. Shadowless looked at Silverblade, who stood up again. He looked at Silverblade's face, which was distorted due to the severe pain. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Because of Dao's words, the originally chaotic scene became silent. Everyone knew that Dao was just a small character. Everyone here could take him down with a single finger. However, everyone also knew that the reason why Shui Lingzi couldn't do anything to Dao was because behind him stood the Li brothers, and behind the Li brothers was the huge godly sword sect. Here, no matter who wanted to deal with Dao, especially in this kind of situation, it would cause unnecessary trouble. Although everyone wasn't afraid of trouble, no one wanted to provoke unnecessary trouble. Jianghu was dangerous. Who would want to put themselves in more danger? Shui Lingzi didn't want to, Shadowless didn't want to, and Wu Kudi didn't want to either. If they wanted to deal with a small character like Yin Dao, after today, they could use any kind of reason, any kind of method to get rid of him easily. But not today. After a moment of silence, the first one to react was Sun Xiaoer. Sun Xiaoer saw that no one had any reaction and was overjoyed. She waved her hand at the people behind her and said loudly, "Let's go." Wait. As soon as Sun Xiaoer's voice fell, before anyone could move, Water Spirit let out an angry roar. Shui Lingzi quickly arrived in front of Sun Xiaoer's team and loudly said, "Sect Master Sun, I said that you must come back with me today and solve the matter of Sect Master Han." As soon as Shui Lingzi's voice fell, before Sun Xiaoer could reply, Yin Dao moved a few steps forward and stood in front of Shui Lingzi, sneering as he spoke. "Shui Lingzi, if you want to stop the convoy, you need to ask for my permission first." At this point, Yin Dao paused and turned to look at Sun Xiaoer before continuing, "Sect Master Sun, as long as I'm here, Water Spirit won't dare do anything to you." After hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi slowly turned her head and angrily said, "Yin Dao, do you really want to go against the Tiangongmen?" Yin Dao shook his head. "It's not that I want to go against the Tiangongmen. It's you who injured me and didn't want to compensate me. It's your fault, it's your fault." Hearing this, Shui Lingzi took a deep breath and slowly said, "Yin Dao, I'll only say this once. 1 level 20 equipment. If you agree, then quickly move to the side. If you don't agree, then there's nothing I can do." Hearing Shui Lingzi's condition, Yin Dao didn't even think about it and shook his head. "No, I only want level 25 equipment. I don't want anything else." Shui Lingzi clenched her teeth and suddenly said in a low voice, "Yin Dao, why are you doing this? Even if I give you a level 50 equipment, do you think you can get it?" Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing, "Yin Dao, do you know why Li Shan and his brother support you? It's because they also want that piece of equipment. I can clearly tell you that even if I give you a piece of level 50 equipment, it will still fall into the hands of the Li brothers. As for you, I'm afraid you won't be able to get anything. Yin Dao, don't tell me you don't understand this simple logic." After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, a trace of hesitation flashed in Yin Dao's eyes. He turned his head to look at the Li brothers and then looked back at Shui Lingzi and said word by word, "No, Lord Protector wouldn't do this. They wouldn't rob an ordinary disciple like me." Shui Lingzi sighed. "Yin Dao, do you know why the Li brothers support you?" Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, a trace of gratitude flashed in Yin Dao's eyes. "It's because Lord Protector saw my sincerity and decided to help me." Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi's hands couldn't help but violently tremble. She had the urge to go up and give Yin Dao 2 slaps. But Shui Lingzi didn't do so. She was very clear that doing so would be useless. Shui Lingzi thought for a moment before slowly saying, "Yin Dao, think about it carefully. In normal times, have your brothers been so good to you?" Hearing this, Yin Dao froze for a moment before shaking his head. "Normally, Lord Protector would be very strict with us in order to speed up our cultivation. But now is different." Speaking of this, Yin Dao paused for a second before continuing, "But it's different now. We're not in Heaven's Craftsman sect, and it's not the time for cultivation. Of course, Lord Protector will treat us better." Shui Lingzi shook her head. "I can tell you that this isn't the reason. It's because you are now of value. As long as you are alive, they can exchange you for equipment. That's why the Li brothers are protecting you." Hearing this, Yin Dao suddenly became angry. He turned his head to look at Shui Lingzi and sternly shouted, "You're talking nonsense. Lord Protector is wholeheartedly doing this for me. How could it be like what you said? You're clearly trying to sow discord between us to achieve your hidden goal." At this point, Silver Knife paused for a moment, his expression turning cold. "Water Spirit, let me tell you, it's useless to say all that. You should think about how you're going to get that level 25 equipment to compensate me." Shui Lingzi shook her head. "I don't. I already said that I don't have level 25 equipment. How can I compensate you? Yin Dao sneered. That's your problem. It has nothing to do with me. As long as you injured me, you must compensate me according to my conditions. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi took a deep breath. After slowly exhaling, she softly asked, Yin Dao, let me ask you. If you injured someone and needed compensation, and that person wanted the blade of your godly blade sex patriarch, would you agree to his conditions? Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Yin Dao shook his head. That's impossible. The godly blade sex patriarch is extremely noble. How could he use his blade to compensate? Chapter 520. After hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi sneered and asked, Since you don't think that the godly knife sex patriarch would do such a thing, then why do you think that the Tying Galman's patriarch would give you such a precious item? Yin Dao froze for a moment as he pondered in his heart. A trace of hesitation appeared in his eyes. Seeing this, Water Spirit was overjoyed and hurriedly said, A level 25 equipment is definitely suitable for the Godly Sword Sex Sect Master's weapon. It can even be compared to the Godly Sword Sex Sect Master's weapon. Such a precious item. Yin Dao, think about it carefully. Speaking up to here, Water Spirit paused for a moment before continuing. Yin Dao, it's better to be realistic. Don't think about those useless things. If your request is a bit lower, then maybe I'll agree to it. But if your request is too high, then I can't help you even if I want to. At this moment, Yin Dao's heart was in a mess. On one hand, there was Shui Lingzi's persuasion. On the other hand, there was the benefits of a level 25 equipment. This made his heart in a mess. No matter what, Shui Lingzi was right. It was impossible for the godly knife sex patriarch to give his weapon to someone else. As for that level 25 equipment, it was indeed on the same level as the sect master of the godly sword sect. In fact, it might even surpass the sect master of the godly sword sect. Such a precious level 25 equipment. Would the Tying Galman really give it away? Thinking up to here, Yin Dao suddenly realized that he was thinking too much. Yin Dao was a bit regretful. A level 25 equipment that was better than the godly knife sex patriarch's weapon. If he could obtain it and give it to the godly knife sex patriarch, then he would definitely look at him in a different light. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao was annoyed. He clenched his teeth, but his injuries were too heavy. Even if he clenched his teeth, he still felt a sharp pain in his body. This pain stimulated Yin Dao's brain, causing him to become absent-minded. He suddenly had an idea. Would the godly knife sex patriarch really not give away his weapon? As this thought appeared in his mind, Yin Dao's mind shook, and he continued to think. Although the godly knife sex patriarch's weapon was precious, it was only a weapon. Would he really not give it away? Could it be that there was no reason for the godly knife sex sect leader to refuse? Impossible. As long as the reason was sufficient, Yin Dao felt that the godly knife sex patriarch would definitely give his knife away. If the leader of the godly knife clan could give away his weapon, then why couldn't the Tying Galman give away the same level of equipment as the leader of the godly knife clan? Thinking of this, the hesitation in Yin Dao's eyes disappeared and was replaced with determination. This was because he suddenly understood that the godly knife clan master's weapon could be given away. The Tying Galman's level 25 equipment could also be given away. All they needed was a reason to give it away. The Tying Galman were a big sect that made equipment, while the Godly Knife sect was a sect that was famous for its martial arts. Although both sects were powerful, their specialties were different. There was one thing that Yin Dao was sure of, and that was that the Tying Galman were not as good as the Godly Knife sect in terms of martial arts. In other words, if the two sects were to fight, the Tying Galman would definitely lose. Therefore, the Tying Galman would definitely not dare to fight with the Godly Knife sect. Thinking of this, Yin Dao's eyes lit up, and his thoughts gradually became clear. Seeing that Yin Dao had been thinking for a long time without saying anything, Shui Lingzi couldn't help but ask, Yin Dao, have you thought it through? Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Yin Dao finally reacted. He raised his head to look at Shui Lingzi and slowly nodded. I've thought it through. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi was overjoyed. She had already explained the reason so clearly. She didn't believe that Yin Dao still didn't understand the reason behind it. It wasn't that the Tiangongmen couldn't give away level 25 equipment to outsiders, but it depended on who it was. If it was a nobody like Yin Dao, then it would be impossible. However, if it was a famous big shot, then everything was possible. Thinking of this, Shui Lingzi smiled and nodded. Yin Dao, it's good that you've thought it through. You should change your condition. As long as my ability permits, I will definitely satisfy you. Yin Dao shook his head. Shui Lingzi, I've thought it through. Other conditions are useless to me. Even if I get it, it won't change much. Only that level 25 equipment is what I want the most. Speaking up to this point, Silver Knife paused for a moment before continuing. If I had that piece of level 25 equipment, everything would have changed for me. My dream would have come true. Therefore, my condition won't change. It's still level 25 equipment. Shui Lingzi's mouth was wide open as she looked at Yin Dao in disbelief. After a while, she asked, Haven't you thought it through? Yin Dao nodded. Yes, I've thought it through. Only that level 25 equipment is useful to me, so my condition won't change. Am I wrong? Shui Lingzi sighed. Your idea isn't wrong, but it's impossible. If you think it's impossible, how will it help you? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao suddenly sneered. Impossible, Shui Lingzi. Tell me, why is it impossible? Shui Lingzi looked at the confident Yin Dao, and her hands couldn't help but tremble. The thought of turning Yin Dao into a pile of mud once again surged in her mind. She didn't understand where Yin Dao's confidence came from. A nobody from the Godly Sword sect also wanted a level 25 equipment from the Tiangongmen. If this matter was spread out, no one would believe it. However, this Yin Dao with a face full of confidence really did it. Not only did he do it, but he also did it with full confidence. Shui Lingzi clenched her teeth and took a deep breath before slowly saying, Yin Dao, I've already said that your idea can come true. You should think of a better way. Yin Dao shook his head and lightly said, No need. I think you'll meet my condition. Speaking up to here, Yin Dao paused for a moment before continuing, If you can't meet my condition, then I'll let the people from Kikyaman leave. Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi felt her heart suddenly beat faster, and her breathing became a bit rushed. Shui Lingzi hurriedly circulated her Zhan Qi to calm this chaotic atmosphere. Then she looked at Yin Dao and suddenly said, Yin Dao, don't you want to make a name for yourself? You can take me as your master. Although I can't guarantee that you'll make a name for yourself, I'll at least give you a certain status in the Heaven's Craftsman faction in the future, just like me. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao's gaze suddenly froze. He deeply looked at Shui Lingzi, trying to decipher her words. Chapter 5:21. Yin Dao wanted to know whether what Shui Lingzi said was true or false. Yin Dao was risking his life to do this. Wasn't his purpose to stand out? Now, Shui Lingzi gave him this opportunity. Yin Dao also admitted that what Shui Lingzi said was true. Shui Lingzi might not be able to make him stand out, but he would definitely be able to have a certain status in the Tiangongmen. Seeing that Yin Dao was a bit tempted, Shui Lingzi sneered. As long as Yin Dao agreed, his conditions would naturally be invalid. As long as he completed today's task, Shui Lingzi didn't care about anything else. Even if he accepted Yin Dao as his disciple, it didn't matter. Shui Lingzi had already seen through Yin Dao's character. With his temper, it would be really difficult for him to stand out. Yin Dao's temper wasn't honest, but somewhat eccentric. His thoughts were also different from others. He was too stubborn. It was simply too difficult for such a person to stand out. Therefore, Shui Lingzi wasn't optimistic about Yin Dao's chances. What he did was just a temporary measure. At this moment, Shui Lingzi suddenly felt someone approaching from behind. She turned around and saw Li Mingshan coldly glaring at her with a face full of anger. Shui Lingzi, what are you doing? I already warned you. If you dare to do this again, do you really think I can't deal with you? Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. I'll tell you the truth. My blade just now only used 50% of my strength. If you dare to do this again, then I'll have to ask you to take my full blow. After hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shui Lingzi was also shocked. She didn't expect that such a terrifying attack was only half of Li Mingshan's strength. If half of his battle power was already this powerful, then even if Li Shan went all out, he might not be able to withstand it. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi's face suddenly changed. He took a deep breath and slowly said, Li Mingshan, don't try to scare me. You only used half of your strength just now, and I can tell you that I also only used half of my strength. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Li Shan gritted his teeth and said, Shui Lingzi, do you really want to try? Shui Lingzi shook her head. I don't want to try, but since you insist, I can only try. Li Mingshan looked at Shui Lingzi and suddenly sneered. He slowly reached out his hand and grabbed the hilt of the saber behind him and said in a cold voice, Shui Lingzi, I can tell you the truth. If I use my full strength, even I won't be able to control it. I can only use this saber to finish it. At this point, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. Shui Lingzi, you don't regret it? As he spoke, Li Shan began to slowly pull out his saber. His strength began to burst forth. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight again, Shadowless and Wu Kadi hurriedly walked in front of them and tried to stop them. Li Mingshan looked at Shadowless in front of him and coldly said, You saw it just now. Shui Lingzi tried to steal our godly blade sect's disciple in front of me. He forced me to do this. Shadowless quickly waved his hand. That's just a small matter. At this point, Shadowless paused for a bit. Then he moved closer to Li Shan and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Li Shan, if Shui Lingzi wants to recruit your godly sword sect's disciples, then she must have promised them some benefits. You can also promise Yin Dao some benefits. Then wouldn't this matter be settled? Such a simple matter. Why do you have to fight? Don't you think it's ridiculous? After hearing Shadowless's words, Li Shan's eyes suddenly lit up, but then he shook his head. No, I'm afraid I can't do what Shui Lingzi said. Shadowless suddenly sneered and glanced at Yin Dao, then said in a low voice, Li Shan, Yin Dao is such a disciple. Do you still want to use him? Li Shan heard this and froze for a moment. Shadowless, what do you mean? They are all godly blade sect's disciples, so they should be treated equally. What's there to value? Hearing Li Shan's answer, Shadowless sneered. I only heard one sentence from you, and I know that you don't like Yin Dao. Hearing this, Li Shan's expression changed. Then he coldly said, Shadowless, our sex matters don't need outsiders to interfere. Shadowless sneered and shook his head. Who cares about your godly blade sex matters? I just want to say, after this matter is over, will you still keep a disciple like Yin Dao? In other words, don't look at how he is jumping around now. But after a while, he won't be able to jump around anymore. If he isn't dead, then he will become a cripple. What use will he have in the future? Shadowless paused for a moment, then continued. For such a disciple, what do you have to worry about? Let me say, no matter what the conditions are, you should agree. After all, you won't be able to fulfill them in the future. Hearing Shadowless's words, Li Shan fiercely clenched his teeth and took a deep breath. Shadowless was too ruthless to be able to say such heartless words, simply. However, Li Shan had to admit that although Shadowless's words were ruthless, they were correct. Yin Dao's injuries were too heavy. Even if they could be cured, his martial arts would definitely not recover, and he might even become a cripple. For such a disciple, what did he have to worry about? Thinking of this, Li Shan's mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. He suddenly stepped forward and patted Shadowless's shoulder and said in a low voice, Shadowless, you are ruthless. I see that your fellow sect members are unlucky enough to meet you. Shadowless sneered. I don't know if my fellow sect members are unlucky or not, but for the Godly Blade sect to have a protector like you, the Godly Blade sect disciples are really unlucky. Li Shan and Shadowless looked at each other and saw a trace of disdain in each other's eyes. Li Shanshan nodded and didn't say anything. He took a step back and opened up the distance between him and Shadowless, then raised his head to look at Shui Lingzi. At this moment, Shui Lingzi was also listening to Wu Kadi's advice. Shui Lingzi, you shouldn't fight with Li Shanshan. Li Shanshan's martial arts are good. If you fight and get injured, it won't be good for either of you. You should think about it carefully. Shui Lingzi shook her head. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight with anyone. But Li Shanshan's actions just now are really infuriating. Does Li Shanshan think that he can control us, Tiangongman? Wu Kadi hurriedly waved his hand. Okay, Shui Lingzi, you don't need to say any more. This matter is over. Let's talk about it and try to find the best solution. What do you think? Shui Lingzi nodded. As long as Li Shanshan doesn't cause trouble for me, I naturally won't take the initiative to cause trouble for him. You can rest assured about this. Chapter 5:22. At this moment, Li Shanshan had already thought it through. Shadowless words made him understand the key point. Yin Dao was just an insignificant person. For such a person, even if he didn't keep his words, no one would know. More importantly, Yin Dao didn't have long to live. His injuries were so heavy that even if he recovered in the best condition, he wouldn't be able to make any progress in martial arts. For such a person, there was nothing to worry about. Li Shanshan wasn't a good-tempered person. If it wasn't for the fact that Yin Dao still had some value, he would have smashed Yin Dao into a pile of mush because he had just contradicted him. Li Shanshan looked at Yin Dao and thought that if Yin Dao could really get the equipment, then keeping him would really be a burden. Once Silver Knife got his hands on the equipment, it wouldn't be easy to get it from him. Therefore, Li Shanshan had already thought of a good ending for Yin Dao, a good ending where he could kill two birds with one stone. Understanding this point, Li Mingshan's mood suddenly brightened. He waved his hand to Shui Lingzi and said with a smile, Shui Lingzi, I was just thinking too much. If you want to do something, go ahead and do it. I won't stop you. Speaking up to here, Li Shanshan paused for a moment before continuing, but I hope you can understand that the matter between us needs to be settled as soon as possible. After all, everyone is very busy and we don't have much time to sit here. After hearing Li Shanshan's words, Shui Lingzi was stunned. She didn't understand the meaning of Li Shanshan's words. However, Shui Lingzi thought that since Li Shanshan didn't care, then it was a good thing for her. Thinking up to here, Shui Lingzi cupped her fist towards Li Shanshan and said, Thank you. After saying this, Shui Lingzi turned around and walked towards Yin Dao. Arriving in front of Yin Dao, Shui Lingzi smiled and said, Yin Dao, you also heard what your protector said just now. Now I'll tell you the truth. I want to accept you as my disciple. On one hand, it's because of today's matter. On the other hand, I see the shadow of my past in you. Therefore, I want to take you as my disciple and nurture you into a useful talent. What do you think? In fact, Yin Dao had been carefully listening to the conversation between Li Mingshan and Shui Lingzi. He had been thinking about the meaning of those words. If he left the Godly Saber sect and joined the Tiangongmen, he would become Shui Lingzi's disciple. The question was this a good choice? There was one thing that Yin Dao had to admit. As long as he became Water Spirit's disciple, he would definitely be much stronger than he was now. If Shui Lingzi were to guide him carefully in the future, perhaps he would really become someone like Shui Lingzi. Thinking that he would become an elder of the Tiangongmen or a consecrator in the future, Yin Dao's heart was moved. According to his current life, if nothing unexpected happened, he would be like this for the rest of his life. But if he became Water Spirit's disciple, his life would definitely change greatly. To become a respected elder. Thinking of this, Yin Dao wanted to immediately agree with Shui Lingzi. However, Yin Dao suddenly had an idea. What he had done just now had already caused Shui Lingzi's anger. Yin Dao could guarantee that Shui Lingzi was really angry just now, and not just angry, but very angry. Then, under this kind of situation, was she being forced to accept him as her disciple? Although Shui Lingzi said that she saw a shadow of herself in him, Yin Dao didn't really believe it. If that was the case, Once he became her disciple, would Shui Lingzi treat him well? Would she teach him carefully? If she wouldn't, then wouldn't all of this be in vain? Thinking of this, Yin Dao looked up at Shui Lingzi and asked with some doubt, Shui Lingzi, do you really want to accept me as your disciple? Shui Lingzi nodded. Could it be that accepting a disciple is fake? Hearing this, Yin Dao's heart was moved again. If he could become an elder of the Heavenly Palace sect, it would be a good choice for him. However, Yin Dao hesitated again. If he became Shui Lingzi's disciple, then he naturally wouldn't be able to get that level 25 equipment. Thinking of that level 25 equipment, Yin Dao's mind began to churn as he imagined his future life. As long as he had that level 25 equipment, Yin Dao was sure that he would be able to become a disciple of the Godly Sword sect leader. As long as he became the disciple of the Godly Sword sect leader, then he would have the chance to become the Godly Sword sect leader. Thinking of the chance to become the Godly Sword sect leader, Yin Dao couldn't help but be excited. If he really became the Godly Sword sect leader, then it wouldn't be as simple as being respected by others, but rather he would become a powerful figure in the South region. Thinking of the future, everyone would talk about his name after a meal. Not only that, when they talked about his name, everyone's face would be filled with worship. Thinking of this, Yin Dao suddenly felt that Shui Lingzi in front of him had become very small. Not only that, even Li Shan, who wasn't far away, the Godly Sword sect's protector that made him tremble with fear, had become insignificant when he thought of this. If he became the Godly Sword sect leader, then Shui Lingzi would bow and greet him, and Li Shan would nod and bow to him. Thinking of this, Yin Dao felt a surge of heat from his heart, crazily rushing into his brain, making him feel a little dizzy. At this time, Shui Lingzi's voice sounded. Yin Dao, don't worry. As long as you become my disciple, I will teach you carefully and let you realize your dream. Hearing the word dream, Yin Dao's heart couldn't hold back anymore. What was a dream? When Yin Dao was young, he dreamed of becoming the Godly Sword sect leader. It was also because of this that he joined the Godly Sword sect with this dream. He dreamed of one day becoming the sect leader of the Godly Sword sect through his own hard work. But unfortunately, dreams were just dreams. When one woke up from a dream, the dream was gone. After Yin Dao joined the Godly Sword sect, he suddenly realized that he wasn't the strongest. Not only was he not the strongest, but his talent could barely be considered average. For a disciple with average talent to stand out among the many disciples, it was simply a dream. After so many years, Yin Dao's dream had long been shattered by reality. However, the shadow of this dream still existed in his heart. If there was a chance, he would seize this dream and fulfill his childhood wish. Now, Yin Dao was very clear that he was only one step away from his dream, and this step was like the gap between heaven and earth. He would never be able to cross it. Chapter 5:23. Looking at Water Spirit in front of him, Yin Dao knew that his chance to realize his dream had come. As long as he could get that level 25 equipment, he would have a chance to realize his dream. As long as he could become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect, he believed that with his own efforts, he would be able to obtain an important position in the Godly Knife sect. At that time, he would really have a chance to become the sect master of the Godly Knife sect. Thinking of this, Yin Dao abruptly closed his eyes and carefully thought about whether this plan could be implemented or not. After a while, Water Spirit saw Yin Dao slowly open his eyes. At the same time, the corner of his mouth rose into a sneer. Seeing this sneer, Shui Lingzi inwardly cursed and hurriedly asked, Yin Dao, what do you think? Are you willing to become my disciple? Yin Dao sneered and shook his head. Water Spirit, I will not agree to your request. I will also not become your disciple. As long as you give me that level 25 equipment, I will become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect master. Why would I become your disciple? Water Spirit stared at Yin Dao dumbfoundedly. After a while, she reacted, Yin Dao, do Do you really think that the godly knife sect master will accept you as a disciple? Hearing Water Spirit's question, Dao hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Yes, as long as I have that level 25 equipment, the godly knife sect master will accept me as a disciple. Water Spirit took a deep breath and slowly said, Do you think that you'll get that 25 kilograms equipment? Dao looked up at Water Spirit and smiled. Water Spirit, as long as you give it to me, I will naturally have it. Seeing Dao being so stubborn, Shui Lingzi suddenly sneered. Dao, you're dreaming. I advise you to wake up quickly and stop having such unrealistic dreams. Hearing Water Spirit's words, the smile on Dao's face quickly disappeared. Water Spirit, what do you mean? Don't you want to give it to me? Water Spirit looked up at Dao and coldly said, Dao, even if I give you level 25 and you become a disciple of the godly knife sect master, do you think there is any meaning to it? When Dao heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Why is it meaningless? As long as I become the disciple of the godly knife sect patriarch, I might become the godly knife sect patriarch. Is this meaningless? Shui Lingzi took a step forward and sneered. Dao, do you know how many disciples the godly knife sect patriarch has? Dao nodded. There are 5 disciples now. Shui Lingzi stared at Dao and continued to ask, Dao, even if you joined the godly knife sect, do you think that with your talent, you would be able to stand out among these people? Hearing this question, Dao froze for a moment before shaking his head. Water Spirit, you don't need to worry about these things. You just need to give me that equipment. Everything else has nothing to do with you. Water Spirit angrily said, Why not? Do you think that equipment fell from the sky? Silver, you make it sound so easy because you don't know how much time and effort it takes to forge a piece of equipment. Not only that, but you also need to consume a lot of resources to forge a piece of equipment. Even if I gave it to you, you wouldn't be able to use it. What's the point of giving it to you? Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Dao, I had the same thoughts as you in the past. I wanted to become an indomitable person, but the reality is not like that. You have to put in the same amount of effort to achieve the same results. Although I haven't become the patriarch of the Tiangongmen, I'm already very satisfied, because my ability is only so great. Even if I became the patriarch of the Tiangongmen, I might not be able to live a better life than I am now. Since that is the case, why not choose a path that suits you? Dao shook his head. Shui Lingzi, you don't need to worry about my matters. Shui Lingzi suddenly said in a low voice, Dao, think about it. If you become my disciple, with my help and your hard work, you can at least become someone with my status. What's wrong with that? Do you have to become the patriarch of the godly knife sect to live a better life? Listening to Shui Lingzi's words, Dao hesitated again. Seeing Dao hesitate, Shui Lingzi hurriedly said, Dao, don't hesitate. As long as you become my disciple, I won't treat you badly. Listening to Shui Lingzi's words, Dao's heart began to waver. If he continued like this in the godly knife sect, he really wouldn't have any future. But if he became Shui Lingzi's disciple, his future would be limitless. Shui Lingzi was the patriarch of the Tiangongmen. Although her status wasn't as high as the patriarch of the Tiangongmen, she was still very respected. If he could really become someone like Shui Lingzi in the future, it would be worth it. Thinking up to here, Dao was about to speak when Li Shan's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Dao, don't listen to Shui Lingzi's nonsense. Even if you become his disciple, will he teach you with all his heart? Will he make you a consecrator of the Heaven's Craftsman faction? After Li Mingshan said this, he turned his head to Shui Lingzi and sneered. Shui Lingzi, don't make it sound so nice. Can you really teach Dao? Shui Lingzi heard this and laughed. Li Shan, do you think I'm like you? In order to get that equipment, you can watch your own disciple get injured and not treat him. Let me tell you, as long as he becomes my disciple, I will teach him carefully. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Shan didn't think much of it. He turned to Dao and said with a smile, Dao, between me and Shui Lingzi, whose martial arts are higher? Dao heard this and shook his head. I don't know. Seeing that Dao didn't say that his martial arts were higher, Li Shan was a little annoyed. But he also knew that this wasn't the time to get angry. Dao, I see that you are also a talent. How about this? I will accept you as my disciple. What do you think? Hearing this, Dao's eyes suddenly opened wide. He looked at Li Shan in disbelief. Li Shan was the guardian of the Godly Blade sect. His martial arts were naturally unfathomable. If he could become his disciple, it would definitely be a good thing. Usually, Li Shan was very strict with his disciples. When Dao saw Li Shan, he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. But now, Li Shan actually wanted to accept him as his disciple. This was really beyond Dao's expectations. Seeing Dao's shocked expression, Li Shan nodded with satisfaction and slowly said, Dao, after this matter is over, I will immediately accept you as my disciple. I believe that with your talent, your martial arts will definitely advance by leaps and bounds, and you will become the pillar of the Godly Blade sect. Chapter 524. Dao blankly stared at Li Shan. An inexplicable emotion was surging in his heart. Dao really didn't understand why this was happening. If he heard this before coming out, Dao would have fainted from excitement. But with Xue Lingzi wanting to take him in as a disciple, Li Mingshan's words didn't have that much of an impact on Daoist. Dao was now carefully thinking about how much sincerity these two people had in their words. There was no doubt that Xue Lingzi's purpose in saying this was because of the level 25 equipment. She had no choice but to use this method to solve this problem. And Li Shan's purpose in saying this should be because he was afraid that Dao would be tempted by Xue Lingzi's offer. His purpose was naturally to not let Dao become Xue Lingzi's disciple. After hearing Li Shan's words, Xue Lingzi secretly cursed him for being shameless. She changed her tactics and no longer used fighting to solve this problem, but using benefits to solve it. Speaking of this, would Xue Lingzi be afraid? Xue Lingzi absolutely wasn't afraid. At worst, she would give Dao more benefits and have him join her side. Thinking of this, Xue Lingzi looked at Dao with a smile and said, Dao, listen to me. As long as you become my disciple, I will wholeheartedly train you and make you a person who will be respected in the future. Li Shan sneered. Xue Lingzi, do you think that if Dao becomes my disciple, he won't become a person who will be respected in the future? Xue Lingzi shook her head. Li Shan, this isn't the same. Our Tiangongmen is a big sect that makes equipment. It's not that I want to boast, but 70% of the equipment in the South region is made by our Tiangongmen. Speaking of this, Xue Lingzi paused and turned to look at Dao before continuing. Dao, think about it. Every day, how many people will come to you to buy equipment? At that time, how many people in the South region won't know you? As long as you join our Tiangongmen, you will naturally experience this benefit in the future. Hearing Xue Lingzi's words, Dao's eyes lit up. Water Spirit's words were absolutely not a lie. They were the truth. The Tiangongmen were a big sect that specialized in making equipment. Although they would make a lot of equipment every day, there were too many people who needed equipment. Everyone wanted to get a good piece of equipment, so naturally, they would go to the Tiangongmen to talk. Thinking of this, Dao was moved. If he could become Xue Lingzi's disciple, then even if he didn't become a consecrator of the Tiangongmen, he could still become an elder of the Tiangongmen. Thinking of this, Dao was about to speak when Li Mingshan saw that the situation wasn't good. He quickly waved his hand and said, Dao, you need to listen to Xue Lingzi's nonsense. At this point, Li Mingshan paused. He turned his head and glared at Xue Lingzi before continuing. Although the Heaven Craftsman sect is a large equipment-making sect, and there are many people who ask them for help, don't forget which sect is the most powerful in the South County. At this point, Li Shan coldly snorted and proudly said, Of course it's our Godly Sword sect. The Godly Sword sect's strength is invincible in the South region. No other sect can be compared to them. At this point, Li Shan turned to look at Shui Lingzi and asked with a smile, Shui Lingzi, am I right? Hearing Li Shan's question, Shui Lingzi was annoyed, but she couldn't refute. The godly sword sect's strength was indeed huge. In terms of martial arts, they were almost invincible in the South region. However, although the godly sword sect was strong, it was impossible for Shui Lingzi to admit it in front of Yindao. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi sneered, Li Mingshan, aren't you bragging a bit? What invincible godly saber sect? What #1 sect in the southern region? Have you forgotten that the #1 sect in the southern region is the heavenly sword sect? Hearing this, Li Shan sneered, Shui Lingzi, everyone knows that the sky sword sect is not our godly sword sect's opponent. You don't even know this 3-year-old child's question. Do you still deserve to be a consecrator of the Tiangongmen? At this point, Li Mingshan paused for a moment before he continued. I forgot that the Heaven's Craftsman sect is only a small sect that makes equipment. It's not surprising that you don't know this. I don't blame you enough. Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Shui Lingzi couldn't help but get angry. He rolled his eyes and suddenly said with a smile, I'm indeed a bit ignorant, but why did I hear that in the last competition between the Sky Sword sect and the Godly Sword sect, the Godly Sword sect lost? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, a cold light flashed in Li Mingshan's eyes. He took a step forward and angrily said, Shui Lingzi, don't talk nonsense. Last time, the Sky Sword sect cheated, so we lost by half a move. If it was a fair competition, the Sky Sword sect would definitely not be our Godly Blade sect's opponent. Shui Lingzi sneered. Is that so? I don't think so. In a competition, no matter what the reason is, the winner is respected. If you lose, then don't talk big. Shui Lingzi, you're courting death. Hearing Shui Lingzi insulting the Godly Sword sect, Li Shan suddenly grabbed the handle of his sword and angrily said, Shui Lingzi, I hope you take back what you just said. Shui Lingzi indifferently shook her head. I didn't say anything wrong. Why should I take it back? Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. What I said is the truth. I'm not the only one who said this. Everyone in the South region knows this. Do you want to kill everyone in the South region? Li Shan sternly said, I don't care what others say, but since you, Shui Lingzi, said it today, I must take care of it. Shui Lingzi shook her head. Since you want to take care of it, then I also want to see what kind of ability the second largest sect in the South region, the Godly Sword sect, has. Hearing Shui Lingzi's provocation, Li Shan couldn't bear it anymore. Shadowless, who was on the side, hurriedly tried to stop him, but it was too late. Shadowless only saw a flash of sword light in front of him, and a cold light attacked Shui Lingzi. Seeing Li Shan suddenly make a move, Shui Lingzi didn't dare to be careless. She quickly jumped and dodged Li Shan's sword. Then with a low roar, her left foot circled and kicked towards Li Shan's back. Li Shan angrily attacked, but after slashing out with his saber, his mind suddenly became clear. Recalling Shadowless's words, he began to regret his actions. Seeing Shui Lingzi's kick coming at him, he didn't want to fight any longer, so he forcefully stomped on the ground and jumped back to his original position. Li Shan sheathed his sword and turned to Shui Lingzi and slowly said, Shui Lingzi, let's not fight anymore. Chapter 5:25. When Shui Lingzi saw Li Shan attack, she immediately retreated. After hearing his words, she sneered in her heart. She knew what Li Shan was planning. Li Shan, you were the one who started it. Why are you blaming me? Li Shan shook his head. It doesn't matter who I blame. What matters is that I won't attack again. Shui Lingzi sneered. I hope you're telling the truth. Li Shan no longer paid attention to Shui Lingzi. He turned to look at Yindao and sincerely said, Yindao, you've been the Godly Blade sect for so many years. I don't need to tell you the strength of the Godly Blade sect. After you become Shui Lingzi's disciple, you'll become a respected person. However, after you become my disciple, you'll become a person that everyone will fear. Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. Yindao, do you understand what I'm saying? We, the disciples of the godly blade sect, rely on the blade in our hands. As long as our blade technique is invincible, people will naturally fear us. We'll become the strongest in the South region. Isn't that good? Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao subconsciously looked at the blade in Li Shan's hand. He was somewhat excited. He joined the godly blade sect for his own ideals. On the other hand, it was also for the godly blade sect's supreme martial arts. When he thought about the saber light splashing everywhere like lightning, that dazzling light was exactly what Yin Dao was looking forward to. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao's mood was surging. He wanted to become such a person. He wanted to become the strongest in the South region. Shui Lingzi saw Yin Dao's expression and immediately became anxious. She quickly stepped forward and said, Yin Dao, you can't. Even if you become his disciple and learn all of his martial arts, there will still be opponents in the South region. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi suddenly sighed. Yin Dao, since you joined the godly blade sect, how many disciples have died because of you? I'm afraid you know better than me. Even if your martial arts are strong, can you withstand the siege of so many experts? Impossible, Yin Dao. Let me tell you, this is absolutely impossible. No matter how strong your martial arts are, there will still be more experts besieging you. In the end, there will only be one path. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. But if you become my disciple, it will be different. Tiangongmen is not a place to fight, but a place to make equipment. I can guarantee that no sect in the South region will think of becoming enemies with the Tiangongmen, because if they do so, the Tiangongmen will not sell equipment to them. So, although they are not famous for their martial arts, no one will dare to bully them. Most importantly, there is absolutely no danger, because no one would think of threatening someone from the Heaven's Craftsman faction. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao's mind became active again. Ever since he joined the Godly Saber School, there were indeed many experts who fell in battle with the enemy. In his memory, there was a protector of the Godly Saber School who was besieged by the enemy and died. Although the Godly Saber School later sent a large number of people to annihilate this group of enemies, it proved that the protector of the Godly Saber School had fallen forever and would never come back to life. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao felt that this was not the life he wanted. He wanted to become an expert, an invincible expert. As long as he made a move, no one would be able to block his move. Yin Dao's dream was to become such an invincible expert. As long as he appeared, his enemies would be scared out of their wits and run away. As long as he attacked, no matter how strong the enemy's fortress was, it would collapse under his godlike saber technique. However, Yin Dao's dream could not be realized by Li Shan, because Li Shan was the protector of the godly blade sect. Even Li Shan himself could fall, not to mention Yin Dao himself. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao raised his head and looked at Li Shan. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Li Shan say with a smile, Yin Dao, I know your talent is very good. If you only practice martial arts with me, it would be a bit unfair for you. I have an idea. I heard that the sixth disciple of the Godly Blade sect wants to accept a disciple. Do you have the same idea? Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao was so excited that even his eyebrows jumped. He immediately said with a somewhat hoarse voice, Protector, I am willing. Looking at Yin Dao's anxious look, Li Shan sneered in his heart. An ignorant kid who looked down on him and wanted to become the disciple of the sixth disciple of the Godly Blade sect was simply a fool's dream. If there was such a good thing, Li Shan would have already gone. How could he wait for Yin Dao? One had to know that becoming the disciple of the sixth disciple of the Godly Blade sect was a very glorious thing. If there were no accidents, he might even become the Godly Blade sect's patriarch. The position of the Godly Blade sect's patriarch was the ultimate dream of everyone in the Godly Blade sect. Yin Dao was not the only one who had this ultimate dream. Li Shan had this dream for dozens of years. How could Yin Dao know Li Shan's thoughts? His mind was blank. There was only one thought that kept going back and forth. I want to become the disciple of the sixth disciple of the Godly Blade sect. I want to become the sixth disciple of the Godly Blade sect's patriarch. This thought kept going back and forth in Dao's mind. It made him so excited that his whole body was trembling. At this moment, Dao had already forgotten about Shui Lingzi's words. The only thought in his mind was to become the sixth disciple of the godly blade sex patriarch. Shui Lingzi saw that something was wrong and hurriedly said, Dao, don't listen to Li Shanshan's nonsense. If there was such an opportunity, he would have already gone. Why would he think of you? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Dao suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. His body shook as he turned to look at Li Shanshan and asked with some doubt, Mr. Protector, is what Shui Lingzi said true? At this moment, Li Shanshan wanted to beat Shui Lingzi into a pulp. But in front of Dao, he could not do so. He could only smile and ask, Dao, have I ever lied to you? Hearing Li Shanshan's words, Dao shook his head. Li Shanshan did not lie to him, because the two of them had never met before. In Dao's memory, every time Li Shanshan saw him, he had a very arrogant look on his face. The conversation between the two of them was always Li Shanshan reprimanding him. But even so, Dao was sure that Li Shanshan did not lie to him. Thinking of this, Dao subconsciously nodded. Seeing this, Shui Lingzi sneered. Dao, since this is the case, let me ask you. Has Li Shanshan talked to you before? Hearing this, Dao paused for a moment and then nodded. Mr. Protector has talked to me before. Chapter 5:26. Hearing Dao's answer, Shui Lingzi sneered. Dao, then tell me, was your protector this good to you before? Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Did your protector say that he wanted to accept you as his disciple before? Dao shook his head, no. Shui Lingzi sneered. Since he didn't say it before, why would he say it now? Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi didn't wait for Dao to reply and continued. Dao, I believe that even if I don't say it, you should know what is going on. Do you think Li Shanshan's words are true? Just as Shui Lingzi finished speaking, before Dao could reply, Li Mingshan sneered. Shui Lingzi, when did I say I wanted to take Dao as a disciple? I only said that I wanted to recommend him to the godly knife sect's sixth disciple. Didn't you hear me? Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi suddenly laughed. Li Shanshan, do you think that anyone will believe you when you say that? Speaking up to hear, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before turning to look at Li Shanshan and sneered again. I don't know how your relationship with the sixth disciple of the godly knife sect is. Hearing this, Li Shanshan's face suddenly changed. Shui Lingzi, the relationship between us doesn't seem to need you to care. Shui Lingzi turned to look at Dao and sighed. I naturally don't want to care about your matters, but I feel pity for Dao. I'm afraid he was deceived by you and doesn't know it. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Dao's face also changed. Under the agitation of his emotions, he once again coughed violently. After coughing for a while, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing the blood that Dao spat out, Shui Lingzi felt some pity for him. But then she thought that as long as Dao's injuries were healed, he would continue to pester her and try to achieve his impossible goal. Thinking of this, Shui Lingzi's pity suddenly disappeared. What remained was a trace of expectation. She hoped that Silver Saber would cough a few more times and spit out a few mouthfuls of blood before dying. That would save her a lot of trouble. Shui Lingzi was very clear that if it wasn't for this reckless silver knife pestering her here, then she would have already finished her task. In the end, it was this damn guy who was obstructing her. If he could disappear, then that would be the best thing that could happen to her. However, although Shui Lingzi was thinking this, her expression didn't change at all. Not only that, her face was filled with concern. Dao, are you all right? Why don't you let them treat you? Dao spat out a mouthful of blood and felt a lot more comfortable. After hearing Shui Ling's words, he slowly shook his head but didn't say anything. Dao was considering things. He was considering Shui Lingzi and Li Mingshan's words, trying to figure out what would be best for him. Li Shan wanted to recommend him to the sixth disciple of the Godly Knife sect, but Yin Dao didn't know whether this was true or not. In the Godly Knife sect, as a low-level disciple, it was impossible for him to know about high-level matters. Just like Xue Lingzi's question, Yin Dao didn't know what the relationship between Li Shan and the sixth disciple of the Godly Knife sect was. So Yin Dao was thinking, what should he do? If he chose to be Xue Lingzi's disciple, he didn't know how long it would take, but he would eventually get a position in the Taiyangolmen. But if he chose Li Shan, he would be able to recommend him to the sixth disciple of the Godly Knife sect. If there were no accidents, then the next Godly Knife sect's patriarch position would definitely be selected from the six disciples of the Godly Knife sect. Of course, there was also the possibility that the position of the patriarch would be taken by another disciple. But this wasn't easy. Unless one had outstanding contributions or had the ability to suppress others, other than the six disciples of the Godly Knife sect, no one else would have a chance. The most important thing now was whether what Li Shan said was true or false. If it was true, then he would have a chance to stand out in the future. But if it was false, then he would have been tricked and lost the chance to become an elder of the Taiyangolmen. But was what Xue Lingzi said true? Why did Xue Lingzi accept him as her disciple? Wasn't it because of that level 25 equipment? Yin Dao was very clear that Xue Lingzi was very angry and wanted to accept him as her disciple in order to get rid of that level 25 equipment. Under this kind of situation, was becoming her disciple really the right choice? Yin Dao hesitated for a moment, not knowing what to choose. Seeing this, Xue Lingzi hurriedly said, Yin Dao, are you worried that I'll go back on my words? Hearing Xue Lingzi's words, Yin Dao raised his head and looked at Xue Lingzi. This was because Xue Lingzi's words were exactly what he wanted to know. How could Xue Lingzi guarantee that what he said was true and not a choice made out of helplessness? Xue Lingzi looked at the crowd and said with a smile, Yin Dao, you can see that there are so many people here. Do you think that if I go back on my words, they won't spread this matter? Speaking up to here, Xue Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Yin Dao, you have to know that if I agree to accept you as my disciple and then don't accept you as my disciple, once this matter spreads out, it will be a huge blow to my reputation. We Taiyangolmen have always been honest people. Once this matter occurs, I'm afraid that Xue Lingzi, won't be able to stay in the Taiyangolmen anymore. Xue Lingzi turned to look at Yin Dao and said with a smile, Yin Dao, come, join us, Taiyangolmen. This is the best choice for you. To be honest, Xue Lingzi wasn't afraid that others would go back on their words because no one would say such a thing. Yin Dao's injuries were so heavy that he could die at any time. Even if he really did die, it wouldn't be strange. More importantly, Xue Lingzi knew that Li Shan wasn't a good-tempered person. Once Yin Dao agreed to join the Taiyangolmen, his first reaction would be to cut Yin Dao in half. If that really happened, Xue Lingzi wouldn't stop him because it would be a great thing for her. As long as Yin Dao was gone, the conditions would naturally be gone. Wasn't this the best result? Xue Lingzi's biggest task right now was to persuade Yin Dao. As for other things, Xue Lingzi wasn't worried at all. After hearing Water Spirit's words, Yin Dao subconsciously looked around. Seeing that there were so many people around, he began to believe her words. Among these people, there were many famous people in the South region, especially Wu Lai and Du Wu Dai. They were famous, and no one dared to underestimate them. Wu Kedi and Wu Ying were slightly weaker. Chapter 5:27. Wu Kedi and Wu Ying were also not to be underestimated. Although their reputation was not as high as Wu Lai and Du Wu Dai, they were still influential figures in the South region. With so many people present, if Xue Lingzi dared to go back on her words, these people would definitely spread the news. And the consequences would be the same as Xue Lingzi said. He would not be able to stay in the Taiyangolmen anymore. Thinking of this, Yin Dao was slightly relieved. On the side, Li Shan saw that Yin Dao's face relaxed and knew that this kid believed Xue Lingzi's words. Li Shan cursed Yin Dao's ignorance in his heart and hurriedly said, Yin Dao, we don't care if what Shui Lingzi said is true or false, but you must believe what I said. Speaking of this, Li Shan paused. Seeing that Yin Dao was looking at him, he continued, Yin Dao, there are so many witnesses here. Do you think I would lie? If I didn't have a certain amount of confidence, why would I say such words to you? If I lie to you, it won't do me any good. Please believe me. Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao asked with a hoarse voice, Lord Protector, what did you just say? Li Shan gritted his teeth and slowly said, Yin Dao, I'm going to recommend you to the 6 disciples of the Godly Knife sect. What do you think? Yin Dao heard this and nodded. Okay. For such a good condition, Yin Dao was ready to agree. But before he could say a word, he was interrupted by Shui Lingzi on the side. Seeing that Yin Dao had noticed her, Shui Lingzi sneered and said, Yin Dao, have you forgotten your current situation? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao was stunned for a moment. He turned to look at Shui Lingzi and asked word by word, Shui Lingzi, what do you mean by this? Shui Lingzi shook her head. Nothing, I just want to tell you a fact. Speaking of this, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, Yin Dao, do you think you are material for martial arts? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao's eyes widened as he fiercely glared at Shui Lingzi. Shui Lingzi, what did you say? Water Spirit shook her head indifferently. It's nothing, I just wanted to tell you that you are seriously injured at this moment. Even if you are treated now, it will be quite difficult for you to make any progress in your martial arts. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused and turned to look at Yin Dao. She didn't care about Yin Dao's angry eyes and continued, Yin Dao, you're a smart person. You should be able to feel it yourself. Yin Dao stared at Shui Lingzi for a long time before angrily saying, Shui Lingzi, you dare to look down on me? Do you think I'm not suitable for martial arts? Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi nodded. Yin Dao, you are right this time. Even if you're not seriously injured, it is basically impossible for you to reach a high level in your martial arts. Hearing Shui Lingzi's impolite words, Yin Dao was finally enraged. He struggled on the ground, wanted to get up and settle accounts with Shui Lingzi, but his injuries were too heavy. No matter how hard he tried, he wasn't able to stand up. In the end, because he struggled too hard, he ended up coughing violently. Seeing this, Shui Lingzi sighed, Yin Dao, I said that your talent is really not high. No matter how much you cultivate, you will never reach the peak. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao couldn't bear it anymore. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Shui Lingzi, you dare to say such words, cough, cough. Cough, cough. Yin Dao's angry words were interrupted by a violent cough before he could finish. Shui Lingzi took a step forward and slowly said, Yin Dao, don't mind what I just said, because what I said is the truth. Who told you not to accept it? But it is indeed the truth. At this point, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. So let me tell you, even if Li Mingshan recommends you to become the 6th disciple of the Godly Knife sect master, you definitely won't have any future. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao was both angry and anxious. His coughing became even more severe. Not only that, but his entire body seemed to have lost its vitality at this moment. Li Mingshan on the side didn't know what Shui Lingzi wanted to do, but he didn't stop her. He wanted to see what kind of trick Shui Lingzi wanted to play. Li Mingshan wasn't worried about what trick Shui Lingzi wanted to play. With the Godly Knife sect's 6th disciple card, he didn't believe that Yin Dao could escape from his hands. What was Yin Dao's goal today? Wasn't it to become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect's patriarch? Now that Li Mingshan gave him this opportunity, Li Mingshan didn't believe that Yin Dao would give up this dream opportunity. In fact, if there was such an opportunity, Li Mingshan wouldn't let it go either. Being the 6th disciple of the Godly Knife sect's patriarch was Li Mingshan's trump card, and also his capital. He believed that as long as he held this card, no matter what Shui Lingzi wanted to say or what tricks she wanted to play, she would never be able to resist his trump card. Shui Lingzi didn't say anything and just quietly looked at Yin Dao. She just looked at Yin Dao, who was constantly coughing and occasionally spitting out a mouthful of blood. After a while, Yin Dao felt a lot better. He slowly raised his head and looked at Shui Lingzi. Suddenly, he felt that his head was very heavy, so heavy that it was difficult for him to even raise his head. Shui Lingzi, you're talking nonsense. Although my injuries are heavy, there is absolutely no problem. At this moment, Li Mingshan also smiled and said, Yin Dao, you're right. Although our godly knife sect doesn't produce equipment, our sect has some precious medicines that could be given to you. When the time comes, your injuries will definitely be cured. Hearing Li Mingshan's words, Yin Dao was suddenly overjoyed and hurriedly asked, Really, Lord Protector? Li Mingshan nodded. Really, I won't lie to you. Yin Dao heard this and turned to look at Shui Lingzi and said with a sneer, Shui Lingzi, after hearing Lord Protector's words, are you disappointed? Shui Lingzi shook her head. I'm not disappointed. I just said that even if you weren't injured with your martial talent, it would be absolutely difficult for you to cultivate to the peak. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi turned to look at Li Mingshan and asked with a sneer, Li Mingshan, as the godly knife sect's protector, you should have a clear understanding of Yin Dao's talent. Why don't you tell Yin Dao what his martial arts aptitude is like? Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Li Mingshan was stunned for a moment and didn't immediately answer. As the protector of the godly knife sect, he naturally knew about Yin Dao's martial talent. Chapter 528. Li Shanshan was very clear about Yin Dao's aptitude. Yin Dao's aptitude for martial arts was considered low in the godly knife sect. This was not to say that Yin Dao's aptitude for martial arts was low, but because the godly knife sect only had two grades. One was the aptitude for martial arts, and the other was the low grade. When a disciple entered the godly knife sect, they would go through various tests. If they were extremely talented, they would naturally be taken in as a disciple by someone with high status. As for those who were not very talented, they would be taken in as a disciple by an ordinary senior disciple. After these people finished their apprenticeship, they would only become a senior disciple and would not have a bright future. Yin Dao's master was a senior disciple and did not have any status in the godly knife sect. This fully explained Yin Dao's talent in martial arts. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Shanshan did not know how to respond. Seeing this, Shui Lingzi sneered for a while and suddenly said, Li Shanshan, why aren't you answering my question? Is there something you can't say? Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Li Shanshan snorted, Shui Lingzi, this matter is our godly knife sect secret. It seems like you Taiyangongmen have no right to interfere. Shui Lingzi shook her head. I don't want to interfere with your godly knife sex matters. I just want to know the truth. Li Shanshan sneered. Do you think I will tell an outsider about our godly knife sex matters? Hearing Li Shanshan's answer, Shui Lingzi suddenly sighed and turned her head to look at Yin Dao. Yin Dao, I heard that in the godly knife sect, those with extremely high talent will be groomed by those with extremely high martial arts. Speaking to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, Yin Dao, tell me, what level of expert is your master in the godly knife sect? Hearing Shui Lingzi's question, Yin Dao couldn't help but frown. Shui Lingzi, why do you want to know this? What does it have to do with you? Do you need to know who my master is? Speaking up to here, Yin Dao paused for a moment before continuing. Water Spirit, since you look down on my martial arts talent, then don't talk nonsense and quickly compensate me with equipment. Hearing Yin Dao's answer, Li Shanshan laughed. Water Spirit, if you have something to say, then say it quickly. Since you look down on Yin Dao's martial talent, then don't talk about it anymore. Think of a way to get those equipment. Shui Lingzi ignored Li Mingshan's clamor and just stared at the silver knife as she slowly said, Yin Dao, I'm just saying this to tell you that even before you were seriously injured, your talent in martial arts was not very good. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, not to mention, you are now seriously injured. Even if you can recover from your injuries, it will have a great impact on your martial arts. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao angrily said, "You don't need to care about my martial arts talent. Hurry up and compensate me with equipment." Shui Lingzi ignored Yin Dao's roar and continued, "Yin Dao, with your current martial arts talent, even if you were to become the sixth disciple of the godly knife sex patriarch, I'm afraid your martial arts won't improve by much. If you do that, then you won't have a chance to stand out." Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused and turned to look at Yin Dao before continuing, "Yin Dao, do you understand what I mean?" Yin Dao was so angry that he coughed again. After coughing, he reluctantly said, "Shui Lingzi, if you are mocking me, then go ahead. I don't care, I just want my level 25 equipment." Shui Lingzi shook her head. "Even if I give you that level 25 equipment and you become the godly knife sex patriarch's disciple, if your martial arts talent isn't good enough, you won't be able to practice high-level martial arts. What's the use of that?" Yin Dao was so angry at Shui Lingzi's words that his whole body trembled. He pointed to Shui Lingzi and sternly said, "Shui Lingzi, you don't need to care about my matters. You don't need to care about my matters?" Shui Lingzi's words suddenly exploded in Yin Dao's mind. It was as if a thunderbolt had exploded in his head, causing his mind to regain a trace of clarity. Yin Dao understood that Shui Lingzi was right. With his martial arts talent, even if he were to become the disciple of the godly knife sex patriarch, he wouldn't have a chance to stand out. The godly knife sect was founded on martial arts. Naturally, the disciples of the sect would be judged based on their martial arts. If he wanted to become the patriarch of the godly knife sect, no matter how many people recommended him or how great his ability was, as long as his martial arts didn't reach the standard, it would all be in vain. Thinking of this, and thinking of his own situation, Yin Dao was suddenly afraid. Was everything he had done worth it? Even if Shui Lingzi gave him a level 25 equipment, and he gave it to the godly knife sex patriarch and successfully became the godly knife sex patriarch's disciple, with his martial arts talent, would he really be able to stand out among the other disciples? Thinking about this, Yin Dao's forehead began to sweat. He was now regretting his actions. Seeing Yin Dao's appearance, Shui Lingzi already knew what he was thinking. She sneered in her heart and was about to say something when Li Shan saw that the situation wasn't good. "Yin Dao, you don't need to be discouraged. As long as you work hard and have the guidance of a great teacher, you will definitely achieve something." Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao's mood didn't improve by much. After he joined the godly knife sect, he had always been in the lower levels of the sect. Most of the people he came in contact with were people like him who didn't have much talent. Every time these disciples heard that some talented disciple had learned some martial arts, they would be envious. However, it was only envy because other people's talent couldn't be compared. There was a big difference between an extremely talented disciple and an extremely untalented disciple. A type of martial arts could be learned by both the extremely talented and the extremely untalented disciples. Although both disciples could learn this type of martial arts, there was a big difference between them. An extremely talented disciple might be able to learn this type of martial arts in 7 days and grasp the trick, achieving twice the result with half the effort. An extremely untalented disciple might be able to learn this type of martial arts in half a year as long as he worked hard. However, it would take a lot of practice to grasp the trick. The difference between these two groups of disciples was time. After all, a person's time was limited. Naturally, the shorter the time they had to learn each type of martial arts, the better. On this point, the extremely untalented disciple would lose at the starting line. For this type of disciple, no matter which sect it was, they wouldn't spend a lot of effort to cultivate them. Chapter 529. No sect would spend a lot of effort to cultivate a person with poor talent, because not only would it waste a lot of resources, but it would also waste a lot of time. But in the end, the disciples who wasted so much time and resources would never reach the peak of martial arts. Therefore, no sect would spend a lot of effort to cultivate a person with poor talent, not because they were heartless, but because they had no other choice. After hearing Li Shanshan's words, Yin Dao silently nodded, but didn't say anything. Seeing this, Li Shanshan hurriedly continued, Yin Dao, if you join the Godly Knife Sect's sixth disciple, I believe that with his guidance, your martial arts will definitely improve greatly. Speaking up to here, Li Shanshan's tone paused for a moment before continuing, Yin Dao, believe me, the Godly Knife Sect's sixth disciple has some reputation in the Godly Knife Sect. I believe that with his guidance, you definitely won't have any problems. Hearing Li Shanshan's words, Yin Dao's eyes suddenly lit up. He seemed to have heard of this matter before. It seemed to be true. The disciples of the Godly Knife Sect's sixth disciple were all people with high martial arts. In addition to their own high talent, it also had a lot to do with their master's teachings. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao actually had some expectations. He raised his head to look at Li Shanshan and was about to speak when Shui Lingzi suddenly sneered. Yin Dao, stop dreaming. Even if the disciples of the Godly Knife Sect's sixth disciple were all taught high martial arts, I believe that they all have extremely high talent in martial arts. The reason why their martial arts are so high is probably not just because of their master's teachings. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing, Yin Dao, you've practiced martial arts for so many years. Don't you understand that if your talent in martial arts isn't good enough, then no matter how hard you train, you'll only be a little bit stronger than others of the same talent? A person with poor talent in martial arts, compared to a person with high talent in martial arts, Yin Dao, I can clearly tell you that the difference is like heaven and earth. There is no way to compare. If you want to compare, then you can only dream. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Shanshan very much agreed with her words, but at this moment, he absolutely couldn't accept it. Shui Lingzi, you're talking nonsense again. In Jianghu, how many people with mediocre talent have become experts? Haven't you heard of these? Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused. He turned his head to look at Yin Dao, then continued, Yin Dao, don't listen to Shui Lingzi's nonsense. There are too many people who don't have high talent in martial arts, but through their hard work, they were able to succeed. I believe that with your perseverance, you will succeed. Hearing Li Shanshan's words, Yin Dao's originally dim eyes slowly began to light up. Thinking up to here, Yin Dao looked up at Li Shanshan and anxiously asked, Lord Protector, can I really do it? Li Shanshan nodded and said with a smile, Yin Dao, you can definitely do it. You have extraordinary perseverance and diligence. I believe that as long as you have the guidance of a great teacher, you will definitely succeed. Hearing Li Shanshan's approval, Yin Dao's eyes lit up. His originally disappointed heart began to beat fiercely. Just as Yin Dao was about to shout out in excitement, Shui Lingzi coldly said, Don't dream about it. Yin Dao, stop dreaming. No matter how hard you work, you won't be able to achieve that kind of success. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao suddenly became angry. In a fit of anger, he miraculously sat up. Although Yin Dao sat up, he once again began to cough violently. The coughing was so violent that his body couldn't help but sway. Suddenly, a strange sound came from Yin Dao's throat. In the next moment, he once again spat out a mouthful of blood. Yin Dao struggled for a long time before he was able to endure this uncomfortable feeling. He pointed at Shui Lingzi and angrily said, Shui Lingzi, why do you want to go against me? Lord Protector has clearly said that as long as I work hard, I will definitely succeed. What are your intentions? Shui Lingzi, you and I cannot exist under the same sky. Hearing this, Shui Lingzi coldly smiled. Her eyes stared at Yin Dao as she slowly said, Yin Dao, with your low aptitude, you still want to become a generation's master? After listening to Shui Lingzi's question, Yin Dao subconsciously looked at Li Mingshan before turning to Shui Lingzi and sternly saying, Shui Lingzi, there are so many mediocre people in Jianghu, but they can become masters of their generation. So why can't I? I have more perseverance than them. I have more determination than them. I'm more diligent than them. They can become masters, so why can't I? Shui Lingzi looked at Yin Dao and suddenly sighed. Yin Dao, Even if you have more perseverance and diligence than them, it is still far from enough. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Yin Dao, these people with mediocre aptitude, the reason why they can become experts of their generation is not because they have more perseverance than others, nor is it because they're more determined than others, nor is it because they are more hardworking than others. Rather, it is because they have more resources than others. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi saw that Yin Dao was about to speak, so she immediately waved her hand to interrupt him and continued to speak. These people who can become masters all have one thing in common, and that is that they have resources. Do you think that hard work alone is enough? Impossible. If you work hard for 10 or 20 years, others only need 1,000-year-old ginseng and can solve it in 3 days. If you have the perseverance to cultivate in a mountain of blades and sea of flames, you can suffer hardships that others can't, but others can cultivate in a warm house and use all kinds of elixirs to achieve this goal. Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi turned to look at Yin Dao and sighed. Yin Dao, tell me, do you have these? Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao's eyes opened wide as he stared blankly at the darkness in front of him. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly roared towards the sky. Ah! The roar was so mournful and filled with unwillingness. Seeing this, Li Shan also sighed in his heart. How could he not know what Shui Lingzi was talking about? Needless to say, even he himself had suffered such a loss. Li Shan was really diligent when cultivating. Chapter 530. Li Shan was very diligent in his cultivation, and his talent was above average. It was reasonable to say that he should have a higher achievement, but he could only become a protector of the Godly Knife sect. Li Shan had seen many people whose talent was not as good as his, but with a large number of spirit herbs, their strength would increase by leaps and bounds, and they would soon surpass him. There were too many examples like this, and Li Shan did not want to think about it anymore. It was meaningless, and he could only blame himself for not having enough spirit herbs to increase his strength. Yin Dao's roar resounded in Li Shan's ears. He wanted to go forward and persuade Yin Dao not to be so stupid, but after thinking about it, he did not do so. Yin Dao's current state was like that of a madman. Just imagine, how could you reason with a madman? After roaring for a while, Yin Dao lowered his head and looked at Li Shan and asked in a hoarse voice, Lord Protector, is what Shui Lingzi said true? Hearing Yin Dao's question, Li Shan was stunned for a moment. Taking this opportunity, he thought for a moment, and then slowly said, Shui Lingzi is right. If you want to learn a top martial art, you do need a lot of spirit herbs to nourish yourself. Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment, and then continued, Yin Dao, do you know why everyone wants to become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect? Yin Dao clenched his teeth and stared at Li Shan, but did not answer. He simply ignored Li Shan's question. Li Shan ignored Yin Dao's attitude and continued, in the Godly Knife sect, the Godly Knife sect's Lord has the most spirit herbs. As long as you can become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect's Lord, you'll have more opportunities to use those spirit herbs to nourish yourself. Therefore, this is the real reason why everyone wants to become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect's Lord. Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment, and then continued, Yin Dao, as long as you can become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect's Lord, as long as you practice hard, you will definitely be able to obtain spirit herbs to increase your strength. Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao's eyes suddenly lit up, and his heart suddenly understood. Li Shan's words made Yin Dao feel enlightened. That's right. Why does everyone want to become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect leader? Everyone knew that there were too many benefits to becoming a disciple of the Godly Knife sect master. Most of them wanted to say the specific benefits, but they couldn't. Today, Li Mingshan's explanation was thorough. As long as one could become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect master, one would have the opportunity to obtain the Godly Knife sect master's elixirs to increase one's strength. After hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao finally understood, and a glimmer of hope appeared in his heart. If the leader of the Godly Knife sect was willing to teach him and give him 1 or 2 types of elixirs, then his martial arts would immediately improve by leaps and bounds. Thinking of this possibility, Silver Knife was so excited that he couldn't control himself. This was a perfect life. This was the life he needed. If the sect leader of the Godly Knife sect had really bestowed him with the elixir, it would definitely solve the problem of his lack of talent. This was something that could definitely be solved because there were too many examples. So many people who were not talented enough could become experts of their generation. So why couldn't he? Yin Dao do the same? Yin Dao carefully thought about it and really couldn't think of anything that was impossible. In order to practice martial arts, Yin Dao was willing to pay any price, suffer any hardship, he wouldn't mind. He had perseverance, endurance, and persistence. In short, Yin Dao had all the qualities to become a top expert of his generation. The only thing that Yin Dao lacked was the most important thing, the talent to practice martial arts. In order to practice martial arts, Yin Dao had heard people say that practicing martial arts under a waterfall would greatly improve one's martial arts and speed up one's cultivation. Yin Dao thought that it was very reasonable, so he went under the waterfall every day to practice martial arts. It was indeed very bitter. At that time, it was already autumn, and the water flowing down the waterfall was very cold and very powerful. Yin Dao stood under the waterfall and was hit by the huge force until he was dizzy and almost died. Other than having a fever because of the cold, he didn't have any improvement in his martial arts. After a few more tests, he still didn't get any improvement. Now, Yin Dao finally understood the reason. In order to become a top expert, in addition to hard work, one must have various elixirs to nourish oneself. Only then could one become stronger than others. Where did the Godly Knife sect have the most elixirs? Of course, the sect leader of the Godly Knife sect had the most elixirs. As long as he could become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect leader, he would have more opportunities to use these elixirs. And if he wanted to become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect leader, there was only one way, and that was to get that level 25 equipment. As long as he had that level 25 equipment, the Godly Knife sect leader would definitely look at him in a new light and accept him as a disciple. Thinking of this, Yin Dao suddenly bowed to Li Shan and said gratefully, "Many thanks for Lord Protector's reminder. This disciple will never forget it." Seeing that Yin Dao understood the meaning of his words, Li Shan nodded his head in satisfaction. Of course, Li Shan wasn't satisfied that Yin Dao understood the meaning of his words, but that he was very satisfied with himself. These words of deceit could only be said to Yin Dao, who was like a madman. If it was said to others, it would be of no use at all. Could it be that as long as you become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect leader, you would immediately get a large amount of elixirs? Yin Dao turned his head to look at Shui Lingzi and angrily said, "Shui Lingzi, what else do you have to say?" Seeing that Yin Dao was questioning her, Shui Lingzi secretly sighed in her heart. Crazy, this Yin Dao was completely crazy. He couldn't even understand these words and actually believe them. Really, Shui Lingzi pondered for a moment before slowly asking, "Yin Dao, do you think that in reality there are a lot of elixirs? So many that you can't count them. And as long as you want to use them, you can immediately use them?" Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Yin Dao was a bit unhappy. He always felt that Shui Lingzi's words were targeted at him. "Shui Lingzi, what are you trying to say? How long are you going to lie to me?" Shui Lingzi sighed. "Yin Dao, why would I lie to you?" Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi's tone paused for a moment before continuing. "Yin Dao, why do people call these elixirs rare and precious? It's because these elixirs are very rare and can't be used as freely as cabbages. Yin Dao, think about it. Even if you become a disciple of the Godly Knife sect leader, will the Godly Knife sect leader give you those precious elixirs?" Speaking up to here, Shui Lingzi didn't wait for Yin Dao to answer, and continued to speak. Dao, let me tell you, this is impossible. Even if the godly knife sect leader has some elixirs, he won't easily give it to others. Those precious elixirs were obtained with great difficulty. Why would he give it to others? Haven't you thought about it? Chapter 531. Hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Dao's face suddenly changed. He wanted to say a few words to defend himself, but in his heart, he faintly agreed with Shui Lingzi's words. Yes, even if the godly knife sect master wanted to obtain the elixir, he would have to pay a huge price. Since he had paid such a huge price to obtain the elixir, why would he give it to others? Shui Lingzi saw that Dao did not answer her and continued. Dao, think about it. If you had a precious elixir, would you give it to others for free? Shui Lingzi's words were like a bolt from the blue that struck Dao's mind, making him suddenly stunned. That's right. If he also had spiritual herbs, would he let others use them? Or would he use them for free? The answer was no. He had worked so hard to obtain the elixir. Why would he give it to others? Why wouldn't he keep it for himself? Seeing Dao's tempted appearance, Shui Lingzi sneered in her heart. He was just a fool. A few words were enough to fool him. Li Shan saw this and secretly cursed Shui Lingzi's cunning. He knew that the situation could not continue to develop like this. So he quickly sneered and said, Dao, don't listen to Shui Lingzi's nonsense. She's lying to you. Dao heard this and turned to look at Li Shan. He asked with some doubt, Lord Protector, why do I feel that Shui Lingzi's words make sense? Speaking up to here, Dao paused for a moment before continuing. The godly knife sect master worked so hard to obtain the elixir. Why would he give it to me? Hearing Dao's words, Li Shan sneered. Dao, how come you still don't understand? Our godly knife sect is so powerful. Why would it be so difficult to obtain elixirs? Speaking up to here, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. Dao, in our godly knife sect's warehouse, there are many treasures that our sect obtained together. Among these treasures, there are many elixirs. The godly knife sect master has the right to decide the distribution of these elixirs. Dao, the spiritual herbs in the godly saber sect's warehouse are not the personal belongings of the godly saber sect's patriarch. He only has the right to decide whether to give these spiritual herbs to a certain disciple. At this point, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. Dao, do you think that the godly knife sect master would prioritize giving these elixirs to his own disciples? After hearing Li Shan's explanation, Dao's dim eyes lit up again. It was a fact that the godly knife sect had a warehouse. There were a lot of treasures in the godly sword sect's warehouse. There were equipment, weapons, elixirs, and even some strange and rare playthings. Although Dao had never seen these before, he had heard of them. This was because when the godly knife faction did their missions, they would always bring back some good stuff and store it in the warehouse. As for the items stored in this warehouse, only the godly knife sect could decide which disciple would use them. Since that was the case, Li Shan must be right. The sect master of the godly knife sect had the right to decide on the use of the items in the warehouse. Naturally, he would give priority to his own disciples. Thinking of this, Dao's eyes became brighter and brighter. It was as if he had grasped the dawn of his life. Even if he could not become a disciple of the godly knife sect master, even if he could become a disciple of the godly knife sect master's sixth disciple, there would still be many benefits for him. As for the distribution of the precious elixirs, he would definitely be given priority as a disciple of the godly knife sect master. Thinking of this, Dao felt his heart surging. It was as if he would step into the peak of his life in the next moment. Dao was so excited that he could not control himself. He could not help but laugh to the sky to vent the joy in his heart. After a while, Dao remembered Shui Lingzi. He quickly turned his head and saw Shui Lingzi looking at him with a sneer. When Dao saw this sneer, it was as if he was splashed with cold water. The joy in his heart was diluted by a lot. Looking at Shui Lingzi's sneer, Yin Dao suddenly became annoyed. He pointed to Shui Lingzi and said loudly, Shui Lingzi, you don't need to lie to me. Lord Protector is right. You have been lying to me all this time. At this point, Silver Knife paused for a moment before continuing. Water Spirit, I'm telling you, I won't fall for your tricks again. You better hurry up and take out that level 25 equipment, and this matter will be over. Otherwise, I won't let you take away the person who picked the door. Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi sneered and shook her head. Yin Dao, you are too naive. Do you really think that by becoming a disciple of the Godly Knife sect master, you will be able to obtain those elixirs? Yin Dao fiercely stared at Shui Lingzi and angrily said, Did you not hear what Lord Protector said? Speaking up to here, Yin Dao didn't wait for Shui Lingzi to reply and continued. Shui Lingzi, the Godly Knife sect master has the right to decide the items in the warehouse, so he will definitely give priority to us, his own disciples. Shui Lingzi, since this is the case, why can't I get those elixirs? Shui Lingzi sighed. Yin Dao, stop dreaming. Think about it carefully. If it was you, would you give those precious elixirs to a disciple with mediocre talent? Seeing Shui Lingzi looking down on him, Yin Dao was furious and sternly shouted, Why can't I? Since he is your disciple, why can't he give those elixirs to me? Shui Lingzi shook her head. Yin Dao, think about it carefully. Would you really give those elixirs to a disciple with mediocre talent? Yin Dao angrily said, Why can't I? Since he is my disciple, why can't I give them to him? Shui Lingzi faintly said, It's like having two blades. One is an ordinary blade, while the other is a peerless blade. After saying this, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. Yin Dao, then let me ask you, if these two blades were yours, which one would you care more about? Which one would you care more about? Yin Dao angrily said, Is there even a need to ask? Of course I would care more about that peerless blade. Hearing Yin Dao's answer, Shui Lingzi did not speak and only coldly looked at Yin Dao. Yin Dao felt uncomfortable being stared at by Shui Lingzi and angrily said, Shui Lingzi, what are you looking at? Hearing this, Shui Lingzi sighed. Yin Dao, I want to see when you will understand. Yin Dao was enraged by Shui Lingzi's attitude. Shui Lingzi, what do you mean? If you have something to say, then say it quickly. If you have nothing else to say, then hurry up and prepare that equipment. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. After hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi sneered. Yin Dao, could it be that you still don't understand my analogy? Chapter 532. After listening to Water Spirit's words, Yin Dao angrily said, I don't understand anything. I only know that I want that level 25 equipment. If you don't give it to me, I will immediately make Kikiaman's people leave here. Let's see what you can do to me then. Looking at Yin Dao's agitated appearance, Water Spirit waved her hand and slowly said, Yin Dao, it doesn't matter if you don't understand. I will explain it to you, and you will naturally understand. At this point, Shui Lingzi paused for a moment before continuing. My analogy just now is to tell you that if you have two sabers, one is a peerless saber and the other is an ordinary saber, I think your choice will definitely be better for the peerless saber. For example, you will choose a better scabbard for the peerless sword, or add some better decorations. These are all things you might do. But for that ordinary saber, you definitely wouldn't do that. You wouldn't add a better scabbard for it, nor would you add better decorations for it. In fact, you might not even bother to wipe it. At this point, Shui Lingzi raised her head and looked at Silverblade before continuing. This is like the relationship between the Godly Sword sect's leader and his disciples. The Godly Sword sect's leader is the master of the swords, and his disciples are the swords. Do you understand what I am saying? Hearing Water Spirit's words, Yin Dao only felt a splitting headache. For a moment, he couldn't think of anything. Maybe he didn't want to think, or maybe he really couldn't remember. In short, he didn't answer Water Spirit's question. Looking at Yin Dao's somewhat distorted face, Water Spirit's heart once again felt pity for him. Was there anything wrong with Yin Dao's actions? There was nothing wrong with that. He just wanted a better future. In order to have a better future, Dao was willing to give up everything. This was a kind of perseverance. But was it really right for him to do this? Thinking up to here, Water Spirit's heart suddenly sighed. Such an ambitious young man, because of his bad luck, ended up like this. This time, Dao's injury was definitely not simple. Not only were his injuries too severe, but the treatment wasn't timely enough. Just based on this point alone, it had already damaged his vitality greatly. If he wanted to have any future in martial arts, the only way was to rely on those elixirs. If Dao had a good family background, he could buy all kinds of elixirs for him and use them to nourish his injuries. Maybe he could recover from his injuries and advance his martial arts to the next level. Unfortunately, the silver knife had nothing, not even a single spirit medicine. It was basically impossible for him to heal his injuries and advance his martial arts to the next level. Just when Celestial Lingzi was lost in his thoughts, Dao suddenly held his head and coughed violently. The coughing sound was so intense that he couldn't even stand steadily and directly fell to the ground. A few of Dao's ribs were broken. Under this fall, he immediately screamed in pain, and large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. This pain caused him to cough violently, and during the coughing, he vomited from time to time. Looking at Dao's miserable appearance, Water Spirit's heart was very uncomfortable. Although she didn't lie to him, she still felt that she owed him. Seeing Dao's appearance, Li Shan also clenched his teeth, and an inexplicable feeling rose in his heart. Among these people, other than the people from Kikyaman, the youngest was Wu Ying. Although Wu Ying was the youngest, he was still more than 40 years old. All of these people were once young and also once struggled. In the process of struggling, they also encountered many setbacks. Everyone had their difficulties, and everyone's success wasn't easy. Looking at Silver Knife, who was coughing in pain, everyone felt pity for him. This young man was like them in the past, daring to do anything for their dreams. It was because of this that they were able to succeed. Although they couldn't be like some people who were admired by others, they were already satisfied because such people were definitely favored by the heavens, and they couldn't compare. No matter how much effort they put in, they still couldn't compare. Looking at this young man, Dao, walking down their old path, everyone's heart was filled with emotions. Dao's coughing continued for a long time, but still didn't stop. Seeing this, Li Shan couldn't bear it, and slowly took a step forward to Shui's spirit's side, and whispered, "Shui's spirit, from what I see, Dao is so pitiful. Why don't you just give him the equipment? Consider a good deed." Hearing Li Mingshan's question, Water Spirit bitterly smiled. "Silver Blade want a piece of level 25 equipment, but where am I supposed to give him one? What can I do? It's not that I don't want to give him one, but that I really don't have one." What Shui's spirit said this time was absolutely true. Seeing Dao's miserable appearance, if Shui's spirit really did have a level 25 equipment, she might really give it to him. Unfortunately, Shui's spirit didn't have it. How could everyone have such a precious level 25 equipment? Even if he was a consecrated of the Tiangongmen, it was impossible for him to have a level 25 equipment. Hearing Shui's spirit's answer, Li Shan secretly sighed. He was also very clear that what Shui's spirit said might be true. Level 25 equipment. Even the godly sword sex patriarch didn't have it. So how could Shui's spirit have it? After a long while, Shadowless suddenly walked up to the two of them and said in a low voice, "You two, how about I say something? You know how valuable level 25 equipment is. In my opinion, it's better not to think about it. Level 20 equipment is more reliable. What do you think?" Hearing Shadowless's words, Li Shan clenched his teeth and thought for a moment before nodding. "Okay, I agree." Hearing Li Shan's words, Shui's spirit bitterly smiled and shook her head. Seeing this, Li Shan suddenly became angry. "Shui's spirit, I've already lowered the requirement to level 20 equipment. You still don't agree?" Shui's spirit shook her head. "What's the use of lowering the requirement to level 20 equipment?" Speaking up to here, Shui's spirit paused for a moment before continuing. "Li Shan, Even if I agree, what's the use? Speaking up to here, Shuai's spirit signaled to Yin Dao, who was violently coughing with her eyes before continuing, Li Shan, as long as you can make him agree, I'll agree. After hearing Shui Lingzi's words, Li Mingshan immediately reacted. He turned his head to look at Yin Dao, and the pity in his heart burst out again. Li Shan carefully thought for a moment before slowly nodding. Yin Dao is a disciple of our godly sword sect. I think my words should be useful. After hearing Li Shan's words, Shui Lingzi sighed and slowly said, Li Shan, I hope your words really work. Chapter 533. After hearing Water Spirit's words, Li Shan silently nodded and turned around to walk towards Yin Dao. When he got close to Yin Dao, Li Shan slowly squatted down and looked at the coughing Yin Dao. He suddenly sighed. Yin Dao, why don't you lower your condition a bit? Hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao's coughs became louder once again. He barely squeezed out a word before he couldn't continue, because the violent coughs had forced him to stop talking. No, although Yin Dao didn't finish his words, Li Shan already understood that Yin Dao didn't agree. Although he couldn't say anything else, he had already expressed what he wanted to express. Looking at the coughing Yin Dao, Li Shan suddenly sighed. Yin Dao, level 25 equipment, it's possible that Water Spirit doesn't have it. Even if you want to ask him for it, he can't give it to you. Yin Dao, who was coughing violently, stared at Li Shan after hearing his words. He wanted to say something, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't finish his sentence. No. Seeing that Yin Dao was still stubborn, Li Shan was a bit annoyed and said in a low voice, Yin Dao, why are you so stupid? Water Spirit doesn't have level 25 equipment. How can he give it to you? You should give up on your condition. After hearing Li Shan's words, Yin Dao fiercely shouted, No, cough, but he only managed to say one sentence before he was drowned out by coughing again. Seeing that Yin Dao was so stubborn and that even the words of the godly sword sect's protector didn't work, Li Shan suddenly became angry and said coldly, Yin Dao, I am the protector of the godly sword sect, and you are a disciple of the godly sword sect. You must listen to me. I now announce that this matter is decided. After saying this, Li Shan wanted to stand up, but who knew that Yin Dao, who was coughing violently, suddenly reached out and grabbed Li Shan, not letting go no matter what. When Li Shan was caught by Yin Dao, his anger suddenly burst out. He reached out to grab Yin Dao's hand and was about to throw it away. However, when he raised his head and saw Yin Dao's eyes, he was shocked. Li Mingshan had dominated the South County for many years and had killed many people. However, none of them had the same gaze as Yin Dao. Yin Dao stared at Li Shan with his venomous eyes. Although he couldn't say anything, his venomous eyes had already expressed his intention. When Li Shan saw the look in Yin Dao's eyes, he knew that if he didn't listen to Yin Dao would be his nightmare for the rest of his life. If it was someone else, Li Mingshan might just laugh it off and not take it seriously. But this lunatic Yin Dao, he really believed it. Even though Li Shan's martial arts were much higher than Yin Dao's, at this moment, he felt a chill in his heart. Looking at Yin Dao's chilling gaze, Li Mingshan's pity for him also vanished like smoke in thin air under the gaze of Yin Dao. At this moment, Li Shan was thinking about how to get rid of this lunatic. Li Shan took a deep breath and slowly broke free from Yin Dao's hand. He retreated to the side and lowered his head. At this moment, Li Shan only hoped that he didn't say those words. Seeing Li Shan's silence, Shui Lingzi knew that his persuasion plan had failed. However, she didn't care because she already knew that this would be the result. Seeing that Li Shan didn't speak, Shadowless became anxious and quickly asked, Li Shan, what's going on? How is your persuasion? Li Shan shook his head with a bitter smile. He turned to look at Shadowless and was about to speak when his heart suddenly moved. As the protector of the godly sword sect, he naturally couldn't kill his own disciple in front of so many people. But Shadowless was different. Shadowless's temper wasn't very good. If he went forward to persuade Yin Dao, he might just slap Yin Dao in a fit of anger. That might not be a bad thing. Thinking of this, Li Shan patted Shadowless's shoulder and said with a bitter smile, "Brother Shadowless, I don't know how to talk. Even if I wanted to persuade him, I don't know where to start." This matter really made you laugh. Hearing Li Shan's answer, Shadowless frowned. Li Shan, you're saying that Yin Dao won't listen to you? Li Mingchuan nodded gloomily. My words don't work. Speaking of this, Li Shan paused for a moment before continuing. If Brother Shadowless is confident, you can give it a try. Hearing Li Shan's words, Shadowless was stunned. After a while, he reacted and asked, Li Shan, do you want me to persuade Yin Dao? Li Shan nodded with a smile. That's what I'm thinking. Brother Shadowless, do you want to go? Shadowless subconsciously turned his head to look at Yin Dao. After thinking for a while, he nodded. I can give it a try, but I can't guarantee that I'll succeed. Hearing this, Li Shan was overjoyed. He quickly smiled and said, if that's the case, then I'll have to trouble Brother Shadowless. Shadowless nodded and turned to walk towards Yin Dao. When he arrived in front of Yin Dao, Shadowless followed Li Shan's example and knelt down. Looking at Yin Dao, who was coughing non-stop, Shadowless spoke slowly. Yin Dao, how's your injury? Do you feel better now? Yin Dao was still coughing, but it wasn't as bad as before. When he heard Shadowless's question, he nodded while coughing, indicating that he was fine. Shadowless smiled and said, Yin Dao, you heard what everyone said just now. What do you want? Hearing Shadowless's question, Yin Dao took a deep breath and barely suppressed his coughing. Then he said in a soft voice, I only want that level 25 equipment. Although it was just a simple sentence, it still caused Yin Dao to cough violently again. Hearing this, Shadowless smiled. Yin Dao, that's impossible. You should know about Water Spirit. If he had a way to take out that level 25 equipment, he would have done it already. Why would he rather not complete this mission than take out that level 25 equipment? Yin Dao shook his head. I don't care. I only want that level 25 equipment. Shadowless continued patiently. Yin Dao, do you know what will happen if Water Spirit doesn't complete this mission? After asking this, Shadowless didn't wait for Yin Dao to reply and continued. If Water Spirit doesn't complete this mission and let Kikyaman's people escape, I'm sure that when Water Spirit returns, he will be heavily punished. Chapter 534. Shadowless continued. Yin Dao, since Water Spirit will be heavily punished if he can't complete the mission, I think he'll do whatever he can to complete it. Shadowless paused for a bit before continuing. But as you can see, Water Spirit would rather give up on this mission than give you that level 25 equipment. So I think that he really doesn't have a way to fulfill your conditions. After saying this, Shadowless looked at Yin Dao with a smile. Yin Dao, do you understand what I mean? Yin Dao shook his head. I don't care what you mean, I just want my level 25 equipment. Hearing Yin Dao's words, Shui Lingzi took a deep breath, suppressing her emotions that were about to explode, and slowly said, Yin Dao, I already said that if Water Spirit could fulfill your condition, he would have already done it. How could this be? Yin Dao turned to look at Shadowless with a deep frown. Are you with Water Spirit? Shadowless shook his head. No, I'm not with Water Spirit, and I'm not speaking for him. I'm just telling you the truth so you can change that impossible condition. After hearing Shadowless's answer, Silver Knife suddenly sneered and said, Since you're not Water Spirit's accomplice, then please don't talk nonsense here. I only want my level 25 equipment. I don't care about anything else. Shadowless' hands began to tremble. He had been famous for so many years, and no one had ever talked to him like this. Shadowless clenched his teeth and clenched his hands into fists. He stared at Yin Dao's head as a voice kept echoing in his mind. Hurry up and teach this reckless guy a lesson. Don't let him know that Shadowless is not to be messed with. Yin Dao had already seen Shadowless's strange state, but he didn't care and sneered. Shadowless, if you want to hit me, then go ahead. Yin Dao's voice suddenly turned cold. But I have to warn you, before you hit me, think about whether or not you have level 25 equipment. Shut up. As soon as Silver Knife finished speaking, Shadowless roared. He raised his fists and was about to smash Silver Knife's head. Come back. Although his voice wasn't loud, it hit Shadowless's nervous nerves. He suddenly relaxed and realized that he couldn't make a move at this time. Water Spirit was a good example. If he were to make a move now, he would definitely get into some trouble. Shadowless wanted to pull back his fist, but he was angry just now. How could he pull back just like that? Seeing that his fist was about to hit the Silver Knife, Shadowless suddenly growled and used all his strength to move his shoulder to the side. His fist brushed past the Silver Knife. Because Shadowless used too much force, his body slanted and brushed past the Silver Knife. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. It was thanks to his good horse stance that he didn't make a fool of himself. Shadowless took a deep breath and slowly turned his head. Coincidentally, Silver Knife also turned his head to look at him. Shadowless wanted to say a few words to scare Silver Saber, but he didn't expect Silver Saber to sneer and say loudly, "Shadowless, if you don't dare to fight, then don't try in front of me. Don't embarrass yourself." Hearing Silver Saber's words, the anger that Shadowless had just calmed down burst out again. Shadowless fiercely stared at Silver Saber and shouted, "Silver Saber, if I didn't pull back in time, I'm afraid you would have been killed by me. Do you still have time to talk nonsense here?" Silver Saber heard this and was about to speak, but he felt his throat itch and coughed again. After a while, Silver Saber's throat felt better, and he coldly said, "Shadowless, don't say those nice words. If you have the ability, then fight. I can't run away from here. I think you're just a useless person. I'm standing here, and you don't even dare to fight." Hearing Silver Saber's words, not only did Shadowless fly into a rage, even Li Shan couldn't help but frown. Li Shan never thought that the godly Saber sect would have such a disciple. Shadowless was quite famous in the South region. Almost no one could compare to his Qin Gong. In addition to the power behind him, he could be considered a tyrant. He could be considered a person with a lot of weight. But now, he was furious at his own disciple, but there was nothing he could do. Shadowless suddenly turned his head to look at Li Shan and angrily said, "Li Shan, you also heard what your godly knife martial school's disciple said. I hope you remember that he started this first. Don't blame me for being ruthless." Hearing Shadowless's words, Li Shan was stunned for a moment. After he reacted, he quickly walked to Shadowless and whispered, "Brother Shadowless, are you really going to fight?" Shadowless sneered. "Li Shan, could it be that you're not willing to?" Li Shan shook his head. "I remember you telling me not to be angry, and to be calm. But how did you become so impatient? You should know that if you kill Silver Saber, then the one who benefits will be Shui Lingzi." Hearing Li Shan's words, Shadowless suddenly understood. He quickly turned his head to look at Shui Lingzi and saw that she was staring at him. At this moment, Silver Saber suddenly shouted, "Lord Protector, he won't dare to do anything to me. If he dared to hit me, he would have already done so. We wouldn't have waited until now." Hearing Silver Saber's words, Shadowless's anger surged again. He turned his head and was about to recklessly charge at Silver Saber. Li Shan saw that the situation wasn't good. He quickly grabbed Shadowless and whispered, "Brother Shadowless, he's just a madman. Why do you have to be like him? Calm down." Hearing Li Shan's words, Shadowless let out a sigh. He was definitely regretting it. Why did he have to go up and talk to Silver Saber? In the end, he ended up like this. He had lost all his face. However, Li Shan was right. Silver Saber was a madman. If he fought with a madman, then wouldn't he also become a madman? Seeing the anger on Shadowless's face gradually dissipate, Li Shan felt a little relieved. Li Shan didn't want anyone to kill Silver Saber. No one. This was because Silver Saber had a great use. That level 25 equipment needed Silver Saber's stubbornness to get it. How could Li Shan let go of such a good opportunity? Moreover, even if he couldn't get that level 25 equipment, even if he could get that level 20 equipment, it was still very good. So no matter what Silver Saber did, Li Shan would protect him. This was because protecting the Silver Dagger was equivalent to protecting the level 25 equipment. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.